I'm going to call to order the committee of whole meeting at 5:31. First step is the good of the order. Any council members have anything for the good of the order? I have a quick one. I wasn't here. Oh.
Oh, sorry, just real quick, just a call out to you all, this man, that was for the crowds, the events, the vendors, music, it was just super great. So, Rita, other than this, city staff, you guys completed that.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. It was amazing. I think everywhere I looked, there was Rita. She was all over the place. And the open house thing at City Hall was really great too, and had some turn. Yeah. And I thought you can see all the things on the windows, right? Like put them all up there so you can walk by. The other thing, I wasn't here in person, so I forgot to bring these, but these are the maps that the Snoqualmie tribe put together that I promised I would bring. So if everyone wants one, I can pass them down. Yeah. Oh, God, I thought you had a question. That was like a question. I'll pass those down. And then any spare ones, I don't know if you guys want to take the rest of City Hall and put them in a rack or something like that, but, and they said you can reach out to them, they have tons of them, so they're happy to replenish. Anything else for the good order? All right, so we'll kick it off. Oh, review of regular meeting agenda. Yeah, go ahead.
We do have one we would like to request an addition to the agenda.
For the cow?
No, for the company.
Oh, got it, okay.
Which would be after existing building, extending the session under, under RCW 42.30.110B to discuss the purchase.
And that's for the council meeting and for the last agenda bill?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll still need to make a motion to add that, right? Sure. Councilmember Napoli?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the crew and everyone involved, Ace Hardware and the FFA program up at the high school for the cleaning baskets. I don't know if we could, as a city, maybe do a little social media post to let people know where those came from and just to express appreciation for the partnership that we had on that with the school and with the hardware store.
All right, thank you. So for the regular meeting agenda, was there anything, I think that's pretty basic, so no concerns or questions on anything that we can deal with in the council meeting? Okay, so with that, we'll move on to our first item, introduction of our new deputy city clerk. I'll hand that over to our city administrator.
Good evening, council, community, mayor. We would like to introduce our new deputy city clerk. Started, I think we're on week 3. She comes to us from the valley. We're very excited to have her. I don't know, Kelsey, if you would like to say a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I was born and raised in the area, originally from Kenmore. But my husband and I moved to Fall City 3 years ago, and we got 2 little ones under 3, and we're just real busy, and I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Very excited to have you here. All right, so with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is the presentation on fireworks. And first, we'll have our fire chief with Eastside Fire and Rescue, Ben Lee.
I'm going to be back here behind a few of you, so I apologize if I'm speaking to the back of your head. Good evening, Ben Lane, Fire Chief of Eastside Fire and Rescue, and I'm also serving as the Eastern Fire Chief here in Duval. I've been asked to come to speak tonight just to share with you a perspective on fireworks through the eyes and the lens of the Fire Chief. Next slide, please. The history of fireworks. I'm not going to go into the history of actual. I'm sorry. I do want to share my history leading up to this next timeline on the slide. Is just that, I started in the fire service as a professional in 1994 and just seen the gamut where slowly certain cities started to ban the use of consumer fireworks. in my own professional progression, I've also seen the devastating impacts of fireworks related incidents, not only medical injuries, but also the loss of property. Next slide, please.
Sorry, look at that.
Okay. It's key method here. Timeline, so as you're all probably very familiar, in 2021, there was a county-wide ban on the use of consumer fireworks. I think sometimes it's important to note that when the discussion around the banning of fireworks, I think people may quickly go to, well, there's never going to be any sort of use of fireworks. So it's important to dial in specifically on the banning of consumer fireworks, which is what is sold at the local fireworks stands, and residents are able to deploy those legally within their property. So in 2022, the ban went into effect, and as you're aware, it has to be 1 year from the time that the ban is passed before it actually goes into effect. And at that time, largely a large portion, and you'll see this next slide, of the county, the cities are already in front of the county-wide ban. So this ban focused on unincorporated areas of King County. And at that time in 2022, you're good to keep it right on there. In 2022, the cities that were allowing consumer fireworks were Duval, Mercer Island, Auburn, Pacific, Normandy Park, North Bend, and Snoqualmie. One thing to note on the authorization to use consumer-related fireworks in Snoqualmie, they have a modified ban. I believe their ban is specific to allowing ground use fireworks only. So they are different than some of the other cities who still allow, including Duval, the full gamut around the RCW definition for consumer-related fireworks. So in 2023, the North Bend City Council took action to ban fireworks, and then recently, here in 2024, Mercer Island did. They were also able to implement an emergency proclamation, just giving their current water challenges. So this year in Mercer Island, there'll be no consumer fireworks allowed. So it leaves us with just 5 cities in the county that still allow the use of consumer-related fireworks. And as I stated, one of those cities, Snoqualmie, has a partial ban. As you'll note there on the map, the top portion center of the map, that green little shape there, that is the city of Duval. One thing that through my discussion with my fellow colleagues, police chiefs, that agencies that are cities, sorry, that find themselves still allowing the consumer fireworks also have to work through managing people coming into the area to utilize fireworks inside the area, so it's deemed legal. I believe your police chief has some personal experience with this time in the city of Bothell, so I'm sure she could be able to speak to that. Next slide, please. This is another area around not just fireworks related, but just generally here on the west side. We are seeing a extreme risk, a growing risk around wildfire danger. This is a statement from Hillary Franz, our lands commissioner, around drought conditions. DNR has taken a significant proactive approach. Eastside Fire and Rescue specifically, we have 2 positions dedicated solely around wildfire mitigation prevention. So the banning of fireworks certainly aligns with the overall protection, the efforts around reducing wildfire risk. Next slide, please. This slide, I just wanted to put it up in front of you in case you weren't aware of what the current ordinance is in relation to fireworks usage. They're permitted from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. on the 4th of July. And then there is a provision that does allow the individual serving as the Duval Fire Chief to make an emergency ban, given some really strict parameters. And as you'll note there, it says whenever there is an extreme fire danger, and extreme fire danger is really tied to what we consider a red flag fire weather forecast. And that happens very few times, less than 5 times a year. It does not take into consideration a long stretch of no rain, temperatures above 90 degrees. I believe last year we had stretch of above 80 for over 6 weeks or something along those lines. And I don't see that trend changing anytime. So the way this current code is written, it would not allow the fire chief to take into consideration a long span of dry weather that doesn't fit the definition of extreme fire danger. So there are very few circumstances that a fire chief could do an emergency ban. In addition to that, there are some fundamental challenges around implementing an emergency ban. Some of it's the timeliness, the notification. Typically, when we've done it one other time on Mercer Island, when we did have a red flag warning, and you're only within like a 36 to 48 hour window before you make that decision, and then you're in a position where you have to go out and try to do the proper notification, and then you have this whole enforcement challenge. So although that could be a strategy, there are some significant challenges from a fire service perspective, and then let alone the enforcement challenges around.
Can I ask you a quick question, or would you prefer to wait until the end? I was just curious in terms of, and I'm familiar with the two ordinances here, but how the rationalization between that and like the burn ban, where that is actually in a contained area, there's some fire controls in place, typically even before burn ban goes into play, fireworks seem, significantly more random in terms of potential fire, but as you just articulated there, the definition of extreme, I'm assuming extends above and beyond the rationale for putting in place the burn ban every year based on, as you said, temperature, rainfall conditions.
Correct. And the burn ban, so that's a countywide burn ban, and so they're operating under some different parameters. So the countywide fireworks ban applies to everywhere outside of specific cities. So in this area where the fire district is annexed back into the city is annexed back into the fire district, and we operate under guidance for the countywide. So that ban certainly applies. And just given the nature of outdoor burning, you can't keep it within the perimeter of an area where even if it wasn't operating, it still was a pollutant that affects the countywide. So there is some nuances between that and fireworks ban.
Yeah, it seemed a little counterintuitive. There's a burn ban, and obviously there's an air quality issue, but also the risk of, that's also the risk of wildfire based on conditions. Obviously the fireworks.
And just to note from Eastland's perspective, we have a burn ban throughout our organization, regardless of the county, starting I think it's April 30th through the end of September. So that's above and beyond the county's burn ban. Thank you. Welcome. And that is the end of the, that's my last slide there, but certainly happy to answer any questions or address any concerns you might have, and just share with you my perspective as a fire chief.
Yeah, I got a comment and a question. Okay, first one, comment. I think many folks who grew up with fireworks, including themselves, look at the last, 50 years of time they've been here. Think, well, it's not gonna happen, right? It's too wet, we get too much rain, the trees have too much moisture content, etc. But the last 50 years is not what it is today. It's not what it's gonna be the next 50 years. Well, thanks to global warming, we are seeing hotter, drier summers. That's going to continue. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So that's one thing. That we have to keep in mind. What it was back then is not what it is today. The other question, or the question part is, so when are we, the council, going to take a vote on this? And do we need to do that a year in advance, like the county? We do. Okay, go please.
So want to have some nuance on what a vote means. So there is what the council did last time was an advisory vote, which is not required for the purposes of the RCW for banning fireworks. So you can, as a council, make that vote and decide as a council whether or not you want to ban fireworks. An advisory vote is not required to take a council vote for the purposes of the RCW.
Okay, so since we don't have a bill in front of us yet, and even if we did, it'd take a year for that to be on the book there. Then what are our options this year? With less than a month to go before.
So you have a council meeting on July 2nd. So if there's interest from this council tonight for staff to put together a vote package for that, you could vote it on July 2nd, which would mean this year, assuming no emergency ban, you would have fireworks, but next year, the ban will go into effect in 2020.
And I would add that, normally our ordinances have a specific timeline to go into effect, and you probably want an emergency clause, and then I could sign it. Yeah, make sure
Would-
that. goes
Would
into
that
effect.
require, like we did last year, with hot, dry conditions? Does that require that, or can you do that without?
You can vote on whether or not you want to ban fireworks in December when it's. The emergency ban under this ordinance is fully separate, and it's condition based and based on the recommendation of the fire chief.
Okay, and that's, and
Okay.
somebody be
I
quiet.
just want to super quick, I just wanna make sure everyone's on the same page too. What we're talking about here is, so this is kind of comes up every year, and we wanted, I can't remember what month it came back up, but we had that quick discussion in the COW saying, what would council are interested in talking about it with the community? And one of the things that was brought up was getting some information, having like an informational from the fire chief and our law enforcement and other experts in the field. And so that's kind of what starting step. And then the other conversation, which we never finished and it could open again, is how do you want to engage the community in that conversation around fireworks? But then the things you're talking about are like our potential action pathways, right? Is things that we can do and like our city administrators that are separate from the emergency ordinance. But this is talking about a potential, so of just straight up banning them or doing a partial or something like that. Does that help clarify it a little bit?
It does, although my immediate concern is what are we gonna do this year? For July 4th, if we don't have cause for an emergency ban, which by the way, by the time we institute an emergency ban, people have already bought all the fireworks. Right, and it's gone, and so are we really restraining anyone from shooting off fireworks with that last minute emergency ban? My opinion is no, we're not. On the other hand, if we did something today, and I don't know if we could, if we did something at this meeting, that gives everybody a month notice.
So we'll go Councilmember Mercer and then Kufelt, and just pause for 1 second. Did you want to respond to that really quickly?
Let's not change me done this year because I think, I don't want to speak for Chief Lane, but if you took a vote tonight, you would have almost no impact on this year unless Chief Lane, through some data and collection of information on fire risk, makes a recommendation to the mayor to ban them this year, but
Yeah, and that was what I was highlighting, the challenge of the fire chief and our fire marshal in implementing. Arguably, there might be a whole variation of reasons to say, yeah, there's an increased risk. But those risks might not fit the definition of extreme fire danger. I mean, you can use Mercer Island as an example. They had a different circumstance, and extenuating circumstance to allow them to do an emergency ban this year. And then council took action, had unanimous support for the ban of not only the use of consumer fireworks, but the sale of consumer fireworks on the island. Now this year, they're allowed to sell them. They cannot use them.
Actually, I'm gonna reverse the order super quick, because I forgot you already asked two questions. So I'll go Councilmember Kufelt and then.
And I didn't realize that.
No, it's okay.
I kind of comment, but I didn't realize that. One of my questions.
We directed towards Commander.
Ban is fine.
Chief Ben.
Yeah,
Chief Ben.
perfect.
Both. If we were to change our emergency
Yeah, the ordinance,
recommendation,
yeah.
that ordinance, to be more in line with east side burn bans and fire danger, your recommendation, would that give us the leeway we need?
Yeah, so I could speak to that. So one, Eastside Fire and Rescue, we don't have our own individual fireworks ordinance. We're responsible for enforcing the codes adopted by the respective cities or districts that we provide service to. So in this case, Duval, being a city, this is your ordinance. There would not be an ordinance to say we want to adopt Eastside's ordinance. What I was speaking to, the King County ordinance is the ban on consumer fireworks. And I don't know the adoption timeline within council rules here. One avenue possibly is an alteration of this ordinance to allow the fire chief a broader spectrum to make a decision to address those longer dry spells. And then you could potentially back that up with a permanent ban that would go into effect at a later date.
Did you follow?
So thinking kind of also in response to Councilmember Schaefer's question. You could amend this ordinance. And I would say it will have very little impact on 2024. Because your next council meeting is July 2nd. So even if you amended this ordinance on the evening of July 2nd, the fire chief will have probably already made the decision, made a recommendation to the mayor prior to amending this ordinance. So certainly council has the option of amending this ordinance as potentially an alternative to a ban. It still won't have an impact.
Councilmember Mercer?
Yeah, I was actually gonna sort of talk to some of that, but because I think there might be a need for hearing and just if I'm on, I was gonna play the devil's advocate a little bit in that. Put some onus on this, back on the council, because we had this conversation last year. If we in fact wanted to ban fireworks, our next council meeting would then bring this up, trigger the 1 year. So I don't have a lot of expectations for making a change this year, and I think that's on us as much as anyone else. When we discussed this previously, a month or so ago, I think I had asked at that time, particularly with thinking about the community, that whatever changes we want to make or want to be based on the best available science, the guidance, which I think we've gotten some of today, to basically move forward with making a decision based on the things and other things we've discussed. And I'm interested to hear the chief's perspective as well, given some of the jurisdictional and being one of 5 counties that, or cities that still allow fireworks and sort of set ourselves up for increased traffic as a venue for people doing fireworks. But I would just, again, more sort of just a little bit of reflection on the council. You know, I don't have any expectations for this cycle. I think there's some things we can do, but the constraints around how the ordinance are in and emergency provisions more or less tie our hands in terms of what we could do. But I think we should put it on ourselves to move forward, you know, whether it's that next meeting, so we hit the timeline prior to next July 4th. And then I would just sort of challenge us to stick with to our guns and sort of move forward and be prepared for some feedback from the community. But at that point, we would have the facts and figures and to support that change. In addition to the fact that we're in a minority now, because we didn't even talk to Snohomish County, which is also primarily.
Councilmember Napoli?
Thanks. So I would love to see, if possible, kind of a list of different alternatives of how we could approach this. It sounds like one of them would be to give the fire chief a little bit more leeway in, you know, what scenarios they would be able to impose an emergency ban. And then also, you know, some of the other options of ground type fireworks, or, you know, just look at what other cities have done, potentially as options. I think that would be really helpful to kind of have them listed out, kind of, there's some alternatives versus just talking about them. I think it'd be nice to have them laid out. And then have the community be able to review kind of what are some options we have.
Thank you. Councilmember Supple, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I don't see how we're gonna do anything for 2023, and it's gonna be a tight schedule to actually get anything in place for 2024. Without any community input. Because we're looking at, how many more meetings do we have before the board?
One.
One. So you're gonna need to get that agenda bill written up, reviewed, comments incorporated, and signed off by July 2nd, when we're in the middle of summer, approaching vacation time, so. I don't know how, even banning them in 2025, that's kind of far-fetched.
Yeah, I would just say this is fireworks, and this is not reflective of my own personal opinions, which is my thoughts on community engagement. It's a big thing here, and it's pretty deeply ingrained in the community, regardless. I know it's a pretty polarized, I think, topic for everyone. I don't want to rush it, but if we are going to move forward with engaging the community, we need to continue to move forward, because this has come up multiple times. And I think what Councilmember Mercer said is dead on, that we need to take that on ourselves, and yes, we are gonna continue. I just think about all the other things that we're working on with staff right now, and so I agree also with Councilmember Mercer that the idea of doing something quickly by the July 2nd meeting so that something could be changed by next is not super realistic. And it, to me, would be almost impossible to engage the public in a meaningful way on the topic, regardless of the outcome, whichever way it goes. So I just want to set that, for me, I would want that expectation set. I don't want the public, the community to get upset thinking we're trying to rush something through when it is such a big topic for them. And I know it'll raise a lot of feedback, most likely. So I don't know what that feedback ends up looking like, or the engagement process. We threw around a few ideas last time, but if we want to keep engaging the community, we need to get it on a plan for, the next budget cycle too, and keep moving forward on it and make sure we check those boxes and get the community engaged on it, even if we think we know what they may end up majority say. Amir?
So, I just wanted to add some comments, and then I know we need to go to the police chief. I would say, I just want to throw out there that nothing is more important in our job than protecting our public health and safety in our community. Nothing. And, by continuing to delay or hold off this conversation, from experience, we continue to put our community at greater risk, especially as everybody in the area and both King County and Snohomish County have banned fireworks around us. Combining with the fact that we are one of the most high-risk cities for a really wildland or urban interface fire. We haven't had a wildfire in this area in over 100 years, and we did have a couple of small fires last year as a result of fireworks in the middle of the day, and we were darn lucky that people were here. We even had an electrical pole fire last year, which could have really gotten out of hand if it had been in a business area. And I think that it is controversial. However, we went through a pandemic and it was controversial, and I would say that this body and administration made some very difficult decisions without public input, with the science and the guidance of the professionals that are charged with keep testing. And I think that as a community, especially as we have grown and our density has increased so rapidly, combined with all these other factors, we don't have an easy way in or out. If a fire happens in the valley, it's very difficult for somebody to get out of town. If something happens on south of 203 or north of 203 fire-wise, it can put everyone at risk, and especially in a high traffic time, could be a very tragic situation. It only takes one spark, one cigarette butt, and we've already had more wildfires in Western Washington since the start of this year than we normally have most of the summer, if I remember what I heard on the news correctly. So I want to throw that out there, as well as just a note about what I did see in the news this week. I think it was actually in the news today that the Eastern Washington cities that had the devastating fire last year, those homeowners are losing their home insurance. So one other factor that I think is critically important for us to consider is the financial considerations of being one of the only cities in Western Washington and King County and continue to allow fireworks, and fireworks do in fact factor into that home insurance cost for, all of our homeowners and business. And we do know we did have a former insurance agent on council in years past when this discussion came up. And that is in fact factored into our rates. So when we talk about affordability and safety and all of these other things, insurance companies are dropping people left and right in cities, in Leavenworth, in Medical Lake. We are not far behind for losing people's home insurance. If one incident happens in our community, you may not be able to insure your home. So I think, when we become elected officials, that, we have a deep responsibility to listen to our community. But we also have an even bigger responsibility to make sure that we are making wise decisions and recommendations that can keep our entire community safe and make sure that one action, even by a well-intended person who does everything right, doesn't cause loss of life, loss of property, or injury in our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Chief Lane, for your presentation. I'm sure, did you have any last thoughts or words or that you're? Well, thank you very much for your information. And with that, I'll turn it over to, you all.
Excuse me, Brian, for Chief of Police. So I can give you a little experience of what happened in Florida. Bothell is one of those islands that, without fireworks for years, while the neighboring jurisdictions around us discontinued fireworks or had ordinance against it. And in 2021, our city council approved an ordinance to prohibit the sale, the possession and discharge of fireworks in 4th of July. With the exception of things such as sparklers, talked about from ground effect, fireworks, they call them tanks, smoke and tanks and those type of things. And the way it affected that is when in 2020, all the neighboring jurisdictions had already prohibited fireworks. And so everybody knew the ball was still out. And we'd have to have extra controls. We'd probably have 6 officers out in the city or 4th of July just doing fireworks control. And in 2021, they issued the ordinance. In 2022 was the first year was in effect. And we still had extra patrols during that period of time, but because of the change in the ordinance, there was no longer any sale that occurred in the city of Bothell. And we still have officers go out. Every call that came in about fireworks was a police response because it was prohibited, but mostly the response that we had at that moment in time was to make sure we had the warning was given because people were still not familiar with our ordinance. It wasn't public, even though we did a great social media aspect, it wasn't public. Not in their moments, right? They could buy it on the reservation or they could buy it someplace else. They couldn't understand why it was. And so our calls for service went down drastically after that. Right now, we still have people out there for the time, period of time on the 4th of July, but it's really a small amount. Primarily the time we take enforcement action, a risk or danger to somebody, so that their house, individual, fireworks show, we always still make on that. But for the most part, if somebody had some fireworks they bought someplace else, but was allowed in the state according to the state laws, they would just get one. The things that I want to share with the city of Duval is the police department itself does not have the ability to safely collect fireworks that are illegally possessed or being discharged. We don't have the facilities that are safe and secure enough to do that. And so that would be the problem. Not that I have a problem with it, but we force whatever that council takes. But there would have to be some time to get those things in place. Often we have that ability. Here we don't.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Oh, I was just gonna put your question to Chief, which was, that interim period, what did enforcement look like when you had under the influence of calming?
We still got the calls. see the sparkler, oh, is that a top, is that a sparkler? Whatever the case might be, we still have that call we went out to. Our calls did decrease, they're pretty limited now. We still get the occasional call about, discharge of other than those type of fireworks, and we still respond to those, but an example here, if we had an ordinance that prohibited use of fireworks, for the first year, you're probably gonna get a lot of calls. Every call is gonna require a police response, just to make sure, one, that it's not illegal fireworks, it's something that they should be discharging, but it's also to make sure you educate the public, to make sure they understand that there's a new ordinance in town that's the aspect of it. I know that we've had some people in town that have already talked about getting permits to sell fireworks. That process, so I think it's always something that has to be considered, and I think that's the reason for one of your requirement. We don't want to, there's a lot of agencies, a lot of groups that sell fireworks and make money. So they have to buy their fireworks like that to get it shipped to them and get that allocation done. But we ran into that the first year that we prohibited it. There was a lot of concern about, well, I've already placed an order next year.
Councilmember Schaefer and then Mercer.
Let's see, just to build a little bit, I think, on what the mayor was trying to communicate, our public safety is absolutely our foremost, first and foremost responsibility. Wildfires, we haven't even talked about the effects on mental health, PTSD, with veterans and others, by the way. Veterans are the only ones afflicted with that. We've all seen, many of us firsthand, the effects on pets. Dogs especially can be absolutely terrified. I had a dog in the kennel once on the 4th of July. She tore out of the kennel, she tore her mouth, she tore her leg, because she was terrified. She was just out of control. Wildlife. Wildlife was largely invisible to us, but on at least one occasion, I recall, over my son's house, he was shooting out fireworks, a black bear running terrified down the street, right? So for every, animal we actually see, there's 1,000 more out there that they don't know what to do. There's just a foreign experience to them. All that being said, I think we have the responsibility to do something sooner as opposed to later. Sooner would mean before the 1 year time frame takes effect. So that would be before July 4th, which would be July 2nd at the latest. Public comment is great. Public can come to that meeting. They can comment ahead of time. I don't believe in this case it makes sense to do much more. I think this is urgent. I think with drier summers, etc., we need to do something soon. So I would suggest, and see if we can get a nod, I guess, from the rest of the council. We have a bill ready to go on July. That would, ban them starting next year.
Council, did you want to respond?
We did do one Facebook post for this meeting, asking the community to come because part of the is going to be on the agenda. We can certainly do more throughout the month. Assuming I get a nod from council, I can do multiple things for the July 2nd. I can take a look at the ordinance of Snoqualmie, which is this middle ground, also look at Waffles, who I think tried to do a middle ground, and anything Waffles, they ended up moving off of their middle approach and they're now done.
I'd have to look at the
Yeah.
ordinance, but it was very clean.
Okay, so I can prepare Snoqualmie for you all to have a look at. I can look at amending our emergency ban ordinance as well as preparing something, and I will share, Mercer Island did a really nice job with their package council on their emergency ban a couple of weeks ago. So we have a wonderful model to use, and I can prepare something similar to Mercer Island's package. So you will have kind of all the approaches in front of you for the July 2nd.
That's it.
Councilmember Mercer, then that, and then.
Yes, I'm not going to retread too much of what Councilmember Schaefer touched on. I just wanted to sort of bring back a couple of points. I'm very aware that there's no perfect
solution that's gonna be, this is clearly one of those problems that you either appease the people who want fireworks or use those that are on the side of public safety and so while I wanna, make sure that we communicate and we listen, I think ultimately this is one of those cases, as the mayor said, that we're gonna need to make a decision, even if it's not potentially a popular one. We obviously have the presentation tonight on the emergency management plan with the component around how we respond to that. We discussed the changes that the state made around roofing material replacement. Again, a lot of awareness over, the cedar versus fire impervious materials, of which, fireworks, a lot of that is just the natural type things, also, to avoid fire. We have, new communities like North Hill that have, massive, undeveloped property. So I think, again, it's an increase, even if you're doing it in your cul-de-sac, the potential to set aside a green belt during a dry season is there. So I sort of agree in the direction, that Rick was going. My only guidance to the city administrator asked is if it was a either or, with emergency management, ordinance versus getting a package together for next year, I would prioritize next year. It'd be great if we could get both, similar to what Mercer Island did, where there was a combination, but I ultimately, I don't want to be in a position where potentially we go to another 12-month cycle. So if being aware of staff resources, again, I want to make sure that the goals. But that said, we probably do need to do some type of structural just to provide some direction guidance to that in terms of my
Councilmember Nathan?
Yes, I feel very uncomfortable rushing this through under the guise of urgency because we have known about this 1-year parameter. Feedback had been given that we wanted to make sure we had plenty of outreach to the community and talk about alternatives. And here we are at the last meeting before the last chance to do it before the 1 year. And it creates a sense of urgency that I feel very uncomfortable with. Especially since there had been feedback that we wanted to ensure we engage the community about this issue. So the timing just feels very unfortunate. And I mean, it feels like this has happened before where, the issue is being brought up kind of, this is your last chance to do it. And it just makes me feel very uncomfortable because I do think that this council had provided feedback that we wanted to ensure we had community engagement, talk about options. And now here we are having it come back under such a sense of urgency that we are going to push that aside. And I just completely don't agree with that. So I would be very disappointed if we brought forward an ordinance and expected a vote at the next meeting, because I do think that this council had expressed a desire to engage, and there was time since we gave that direction.
All right, Councilmember Cassell?
I would agree with Council Members Schaefer and Mercer on this, and Mayor Overlander, because there are people who have been waiting for this ban and hoping for this ban for the last decade or more, that just, it's so stressful for them on 4th and on New Year's Eve, because New Year's Eve it happens too. There was a post on the discussion board yesterday about Crystal Haven Horse Farm, which is close to town, and somebody let off fireworks next to the stable after or during Duval days, and the horses lost it. They had to run in there and contain them to make sure they didn't get hurt and that the stalls didn't get broken. Someone else commented that they had a rodeo horse who just about injured themselves. They were so stressed and freaked out. That's just horses. The number of pets who run away, get run over, the number of birds that are just decimated every year by this is just astronomical. And we're not even talking about the human cost. The kids who lose fingers, hands, limbs, the adults who do it too, lose eyes. It's not just fun and games. We have better alternatives now. Look at the T-Mobile display on New Year's Eve with lasers. freaking fantastic. We don't need fireworks anymore, not in this day and age. So,
We
So
take a straw.
Well, I want to finish to make sure everyone has a chance. Did you want to weigh in?
No, I mean, I wouldn't object to seeing an agenda bill. Second, I'm not saying I would vote for it. I kind of agree with, Councilmember Naplan that we're kind of rushing into it. I wish we could go back and have a follow-up meeting to the one we had a couple months ago when we first brought this up. I don't know how it got dropped, and I understand things happen, so. But I understand the urgency to get something done in time for next year. Is there a possibility that even if this ordinance doesn't pass on July 2nd or doesn't get brought up, that I'm not all that familiar with the emergency ban, but I think we did have one a couple years ago, didn't we?
Question.
2 years, it was 2 or 3 years ago at this point. You can technically implement the emergency ban if you meet those extreme circumstances. One of the problems was last year, it was definitely not safe for fireworks and we didn't meet the threshold. There are also significant logistical issues and expensive city costs to taxpayers to even do the research and do the work necessary to try and determine if that emergency becomes safe. The emergency ban, that was definitely, for a historical perspective, that was an interim. While the referendum, the advisory vote, people at the time, mind you, our population turned over probably 50% since then. And we've gained a couple thousand residents. At the time, when constituents talk to the city, they would often say, we don't want it banned out right now, but we want it to be banned during emergency times. And to the other council members' point, they've also made it very clear, many people in the community made it clear the entire time I've lived here, they don't want fireworks. My street, less than 2 full lanes, cars on either side, wood in the middle of the road, fireworks shooting off all around the cars. It's not a safe situation, but I do also, to the point of bringing this up or bringing it up recently, I just want to just remind everyone that this was a council consensus to bring it back in June, rather than have the discussion a few months ago, and the discussion was brought up last year right after the 4th of July. So as a whole, it has been brought up to council multiple times, and council's choice to push it down the pathway, which is totally fine and legislative decision. But that is why we're here today versus having a package in front of council 2, 6, 8, or 9.
So I'll weigh in with mine, and then I'll open it up again if anyone has a second. I think for me, I hear what everyone's saying. I think that engagement with the community via surveys, open houses, whatever ends up happening, I don't really agree with doing another advisory vote, honestly, because I think it's just a matter of time before the needle moves and it's just expensive to do. So I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer funds. I think that community engagement is also a chance to start slowly educating the community, talking about how, you have something and then it takes some time for everyone to kind of understand that things have changed. Some of the examples brought up, like New Year's and Uvalde days, when someone took it upon themselves to do that terrible thing. They obviously weren't allowed then, but somebody still decided to go get some and set them off, or maybe they had some left over, I'm not sure. So I don't want there to be any expectation that a ban magically makes them all stop. I mean, I think it's significant would stop them, but I think, and I also have personal experiences with pets that are terrified, kids that have sensory processing issues, veterans in my family who I know would tell me, don't use me as a reason. Just not to say that, okay? So be careful with that one. But yeah, what I would like to, I don't honestly support getting an agenda bill to ban them on the next week. What I do support is coming up with a timeline and a plan for how we're going to approach this with the community and then stick to it. I mean, and I'm talking within months here, set out some things. If we're serious about this, that we would want to see happen. Do you want a public hearing? We don't need one, but do you want one? Do you want a community open house? Let's set a timeline and a plan and then stick to it, but it won't happen before, so it wouldn't happen in time for next year, right? So it would have, it's not gonna happen by the July 2nd meeting, so therefore they wouldn't be banned, or whatever the outcome is by next year. But I just think we owe it to everyone, and I understand the things with safety too, and that is important, but we do owe the community an open conversation about it, and that's my thoughts. So I'll open it back up if we want to go around again. Councilmember Mercer.
Yeah, sort of a common question you mentioned of the chief, was, I know even we specify one day in the ordinance, it's never one day, they sure, a couple days, people are buying fireworks, and so that, I wanted to acknowledge Mayor Pro Tem's comment, because I think the chief mentioned even current enforcement, what do you do with fireworks, how do you do for the warnings that would go away. This was more a question for the city attorney, which I don't know if they're online, but it was really more about the 12 months. If there's any, is that a state, that's an RPW, for anything with a ban? That's what I wanted to make sure. So even some type of modification to the ordinance there, that would still require, if it was worded as not a ban, but we lowered the threshold on safety, that could potentially prove it, or is that still, that's what I got.
No, the ordinance on the emergency ban, that is separate and it does not require the 12-year waiting or 12-month waiting period. So you could change that.
So if that was around weather conditions, then that, it wasn't a ban, but it limited if the conditions were bad in July, and then the ban went into effect. I was trying to find if there's a way we could shorten the 12 months.
So the legal guidance that we had, very firmly when we had an emergency, when council approved the emergency ban ordinance, is that any changes, that even took 1 full year to take effect. So any changes to any fireworks policy, whether it's strengthening or loosening regulations, so you could be a city that has fireworks banned and reverse it. You still have to have that 365 days. So there is no wiggle room there. There's been many efforts over the years of the state legislature to change that. The governor doesn't even have the power to ban fireworks on an emergency basis. It happens and nobody's sued, but the governor doesn't even have that authority. It is strictly with the fireworks industry. And so it has been, I experienced it down there firsthand in very strong lobby. The proponents of more safe and sane have not been able to get legislation through to provide this relief to the jurisdiction.
Sorry, I just want to acknowledge that I wasn't trying to force it through, but the alternative is 2026, basically. So,
And an outbreak. So you could do something on July 2nd to effectuate. My point was you could do a change to the emergency ban language for 25. You could not, if you wanted to create an interim solution to buy.
and then you can buy time for 20.
Yeah, and then you would have to go back and pull them, but if you wanted to buy time for more intense community engagement, that's the one thing you could do that would impact 2025.
Thank you.
And what is that then?
Change the emergency,
Which would allow the fire chief to make.
So with our time in mind, because we still have 1 item left and we have time to do that, I just want to ask, it sounds like we're free and free, leaning on both sides a bit. Is anyone, any of you three feel comfortable? Because we're split, and so therefore I'm not sure what would happen with that, and then we will be looking at, having our 7 council members again, but with that, how are folks feeling about coming up with a solid plan, moving forward for engagement versus trying to draft an agenda bill or some kind of thing? Councilmember Schaefer?
I think you miscount. I think we were 4-2. I believe Councilmember Supple said he would be in favor. He said he didn't know which way to vote, but he would be in favor of seeing that on board. So did I misrepresent that?
No, I did say that,
Okay, I think we were 4-2.
but I kind of lean toward what council member. Need. So if you're straw poll, I would probably, you would probably end up 3-2.
No matter what the vote, I think that gives us rationale to put it on the agenda for voice.
Putting what on the agenda though?
the proposal to ban fireworks in Duval started, in July 2020.
And is there any expectation of community engagement or things? I mean, I worry about what we're asking staff to do in between now and July 2nd, besides the agenda.
Yeah, and I would be a little different. I would be more in favor of changing the language to give more control to the city for 2025 and then doing the community engagement out of the broader vision. But I think we don't have the tools for 2025 to even do anything. So I think that would still accomplish what you're trying to do, I think, Rick, but I think that would be more well received because it wouldn't be an outright ban in 2025. It would be basically reassessing how we make a determination whether it's safe to do fireworks for 2025 while we figure out the longer term.
Councilmember Cooper?
That's what I was thinking in the more discussion. If we get the chief, the fire chief, one way to make that call. And then it covers council and city bases while we get all our ducks in a row and get the community engagement and get set up for.
So does council want, and this doesn't obligate you to vote one way or another on it, but is the consensus in general that you want like some kind of change to the emergency ban language to be presented on July 2nd?
If that's doable.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councilmember Naplan, are you still, like, would you be open to considering that? Doesn't obligate you to a vote on it, but.
I just, on principle, I feel like we have plenty of time and creating a sense of urgency, at the last minute, it makes me extremely uncomfortable. So, no, I'm not in favor of that. It feels rushed and, potentially artificially urgent.
And I would just like reiterate that I'm willing to look at it and consider it. I, without seeing it, I can't say one way or another which way I would fall on that. But, community involvement is really important to me. And I know what you're saying too, is we can kind of at least do that and then keep it
I
going.
don't think that would just basically saying if conditions were favorable to fireworks.
Yeah, no, I'm
Outside of
really
it.
interested in seeing what the scientific parameter change could be and to make it easier, and not so rare, I suppose, more sane. Councilmember Schaefer?
Okay, just to remind all of us that, the fire danger is only one of the many reasons that we should be banning fireworks. So the fire chief can address that one way or the other. It does not address, mental health PTSD issue, doesn't address the stress or pets or stress for wildlife. Let's keep that in mind. So this is not a catch-all thing here, that we're doing. And frankly, I think we're just pushing it down the road yet again. So we're talking 2 more years that we're going to expose the public to safety issues and mental health issues and everything else. I think the council is waffling here. I think we should make a hard decision. Apparently, I'm the only one that I think we should make a hard decision and at least have a bill that would ban fireworks by on our July 2nd meeting.
Well, I think we have a consensus of what, we could look at in July. I hear what you're saying. I think, I didn't hear that strongest opinion from you when we talked about how we wanted to approach this months ago. So, I mean, I don't feel the council is really waffling. I think we're just trying to figure out the best way to move forward for the community. But is that sound doable? Can you kind of path forward, or if you have questions, now's the time to ask, because I know we're all over the place.
So I want to state what I believe I'm hearing, and then, certainly chime in if I have misheard.
Mhm.
On July 2nd, I'm going to bring an amended emergency ordinance for council consideration. I would also suggest that I prepare for you all a communication and community engagement plan as a draft, as part of the package that is ready for you on July 5th. So, is what what I think I heard is that you all want to commit to a public engagement process. So that when it's time, which Councilmember Schaefer, I think one of his first questions is, when can you make this vote? You could make a vote to ban fireworks in October, November, if you feel like you have fulfilled the community engagement process, which would then allow you to ban in 2026. So you don't have to wait until next June, next July to make that vote. You can do the emergent, or you could do the full ban as soon as you feel satisfied with your community engagement process.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from, and I want to acknowledge, well, even though we're not supposed to be addressing, that I am against fireworks, so I don't want to appear to be waffling here. I just also do not want to acknowledge Councilmember Naplin's and Mayor Pro Tem is that a month is not very much. So I want to make sure that there's adequate time to communicate, but I do want to be clear where my position is. So, trying to balance both of those things, and so it's not necessarily perpetually kicking down the can down the road. That's why I simply call ourselves out a little bit as we, if this is in fact what we need to do, we need to not drag our feet and expeditiously as we have an opportunity to review the materials as city administrators.
Does that sound
What exactly captures what I heard, and I think it's the closest we'll get to. Yeah,
you will see it in the July pack.
Okay.
Same thing.
All right, so with that, thank you for that. I know that's a tough one and it will continue to be challenging, so I appreciate all the guys. So with that, we'll move to our Department of Finance workshop, with Director McMahon.
Okay, we want quarter four. Yeah, we'll finish 2023 first.
Figured, so that.
Okay, Beth McMahon, Director of Finance. I am presenting quarter four, 2023, financial report today. I want to note that the city's 2023 annual financial report has been sent to the state auditor's office. And that a copy has been provided in today's council packet with the written report. The presentation and the annual report is based on unaudited financial data. State audit for the city of Duval will be scheduled for this coming fall, 2024, and will include the audit of fiscal years 2022 and 2023. Overall, with its many challenges, the 2022 fiscal year has ended with the city continuing to be fiscally sound, and I have every confidence in the integrity of our financial data. I do want to note that as we prepared our annual report, we being new, our new accountant being new, everything balanced out beautifully. I've never had any question about the integrity of our financial data, although we, continue to explore and utilize tools in our financial system. The financial data is definitely intact, so I'm very pleased about how everything went together. Okay, going to the next slide. Okay, so total revenue collected for 2023 exceeds budget. Important to note that there are expenditures budgeted in the general fund, supported by strategic funds and ARPA funds through budget transfers. So the reduction in general fund revenue is due to those expenses not occurring in 2023, so then the transfers didn't happen. And that was probably about 800,000 of revenue transfers noted as revenue that didn't happen. Special revenue fund, the increase in revenue of our budget is due to increased revenue for permit fees and impact fees. And for CIP funds, increased revenue have to do with general facility charges. Move to the next slide. So total expenditures came in under budget, spending only about 88%, 89% of budget. General fund reduction in salary and benefits are related to our ARPA fund supported LTE budget or LTE staff.
Director McMahon, I'm so sorry to, I just want to ask, if we have questions in between, would it easier?
Yeah, you can talk.
Okay, I think Councilmember Naplan has her hand up, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I didn't quite catch what you were talking about, how you said there was about maybe $800,000 of revenue that wasn't transferred, or I think I wasn't completely following what you were saying. Is there any way you can do that?
So the way the budget was set up, we have ARPA funds that support our limited term employees. The employees' salary and wage, the salary budget or benefit expenses were budgeted in the general fund. So we're processed through the general fund. The money for ARPA is then transferred from our ARPA fund into our general fund to cover those expenses. So that's why it kind of inflates the expenses and inflates the revenue. But since we didn't hire our LTE employees until later in the year in 23, like we had budgeted a full year, we didn't transfer in because we didn't have that many expenses occur. And you see that also with some strategic fund expenses that didn't happen in 23. So of course the transfer didn't happen. So I just wanted to, you know, the $1 million reduction in general fund revenue kind of looks like, hey, what is that? It's really expenses that didn't happen and transfers that didn't, you know, need to happen to cover that.
Okay, so that you did transfer in whatever to cover whatever expenses actually occurred. So there was a balancing out of.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, and that's the way the budget was set up. When actual expenses happen,
Yes.
we do it, the transfers to cover the actual.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. I think that explains everything there. You can go to the next slide. What happened? Oh, I was gonna say, what? Okay, so this is general fund revenue. 8 million budgeted, 7 million received. Again, this has to do with the reduction in the spend and transfer of ARPA funds. Yeah, I mean, everything's pretty much come in under budget. I mean, at budget, except for the general fund, which I think we've already explained, or that's what this is, general fund. Okay, we can go to the next slide, once there's questions. General fund expenses, again, we see the reduction in the salary and wages due to our LTE positions. Spend is under budget, so simple position to be in. Okay, the next slide. Building and permitting revenue, expenses are all under budget. Full impact, you see the first in amount collected. So you'll see the revenue noted here, you'll see the expense and they're washed out. So just wanted to point that out. Everything else is coming in as expected. You can go to the next slide. Expenses coming in under budget. Comfortable place to be. And you can go to the next slide. Here we have our utilities. We experienced a slight increase in revenue over budget with expenses coming in pretty much at budget. So kind of a comfortable place to be. Go to the next slide. These are utilities general facility charges. Again, there was just an increase in revenue from 2023 over budget. I mean, I will say overall for 2023, there's not been any red flags. There's not been anything concerning, revenue coming in overall at or above what we budgeted. Expenses, are coming in under budget. It's just a really comfortable place to be. But there's really not a whole lot to note. You can continue. This real estate tax, slightly down compared to last year with average sales price increase of 2023, providing total revenue slightly up from 2022. Okay. Impact fee revenue is coming up. Park impact fees coming in as budgeted, street income above budget. Budget was, 494K, for 23 budget amount for streets, so we're slightly up there. Okay, that's fine. Transportation benefit district sales tax, it remains consistent with 2023, comparison, actual revenues coming in as expected and matching budget. Okay, sales tax revenue has come in slightly under last year's actual, but still remaining strong. Revenue split out between our general fund and strategic funds, the amounts are noted there.
I'm just curious, and you don't have the numbers here, but, you know, I know during COVID in particular, we saw a lot of uptick in online sales tax revenue via online sales versus in the local. Do you have a breakout anywhere? Again, not for this, but I'd love to know like how that
We are, yeah,
has shifted or changed.
now that we're kind of getting operationally up to file one thing, we are going to be digging into providing some of that detail and breakout. And so we'll have more comprehensive reports and more data. And I'm happy to go back to 23 and pull some of that data in detail for you.
Yeah, it's not a priority. It's just as we think about economic development and how where this washes out with
Yeah.
Against.
No, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, just to follow on to that, yeah, it's just as important to know what sales tax is generated locally, right, you know, all local businesses. Again, you know, that's an indication that our, you know, one indication that our economic development efforts may be successful or not successful for that matter.
Yeah.
So this is one of the measurements that we do.
Okay, go to the next slide. This is just a wrap up of overall beginning balances, what our revenue and expense experience was for 23, and then our ending balances. And, revenue has exceeded our spend last year, so our balances are really strong. Any more questions? Okay, so we'll flip. Okay, we'll flip over to Q1 of 24. I'll just start by saying that, you know, this is a preliminary finance report. So our team is still currently working on doing full financial reconciliations. Especially since we've recently transitioned to new staff member. As we let go of our calendar for 2023, we really look to 2024 with a positive approach, and with first quarter numbers coming in and looking financially sound for the city. So you go to the next slide. Revenue for the first quarter. So about 20% of the city's revenues are generated through taxes, which is the main source of tax revenue comes from property sales and utility tax, which are used to fund overall operations for the city. Q1 is 25% of the fiscal year. Revenue is pretty much coming in as budgeted and expected. General fund revenue received for first quarter is to 20%, mainly due to the timing of our property tax income, which is received heavily in May and November. Okay, next slide. So our overall expenditures to date, again, with 25% of those we have completed, we only have 2% spent, so really nothing concerning happening here. Councilmember Napoli?
Let me go back to that last slide really quick. Perfect. So when I look at the general fund, the expenses are above pace of what normally, 25% would be, 1 quarter gone by. And knowing that a lot of, there can be salary adjustments throughout the year, so you would actually expect your first quarter to be slightly lower along the pace because as people reach their annual increases. Anyway, do you know why it's a little bit above what you would expect for the pace?
Well, if you hold on a minute, we'll get to a general fund specific expenditures line, and that might give you some of the detail that you're looking for.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, you can go to the next slide. So this is general fund revenue. So general fund revenue is primary operating fund of the city, which supports the hall operations, police department, community development, finance, etc. 2024 revenue is on track and coming in over 2023 Q1 numbers. Intergovernmental revenue includes grant funding income, which I mean is pretty much unpredictable on that. Miscellaneous revenues include interest earning, and our investments are doing quite well again this year. Thankful for that. The other revenue on here are the scheduled transfers from water, sewer, and storm for overhead support, along with the ARPA funding transfers as well. Okay. So general fund expenses. So when you're looking at salary and wages expended this year compared to last year, you'll want to remember that our LTE employees were not extended last year, so that's been increased to this year, but that is funded by ARPA funds that will be transferred in. Transfers out here are for debt service and IT funding support. Most everything else is coming in as expected.
Sorry, I know kind of.
Yeah, you would, yeah. Yeah, it'll. Okay.
Oh, no, cheers for him.
Okay, let's just move forward. So building and permitting revenue received less than 2023, but building permit fees are coming in as budgeted for the current 24 year. School impact fees are received and then dispersed, so that's sort of a wash. Miscellaneous revenue includes interest earning. Okay, expenses are expected. You don't see an expense for school impact fees. We got a little behind with the vacancy of finance stuff, so that is caught up, and so you'll see those numbers reflected in the next quarter. Okay. So utilities, utility revenues are received for over 2,900 commercial and residential utility accounts for water, sewer, storm drainage services. We're seeing revenue coming in as expenses with spend being under budget amounts. General facility charges are connection fees received at the time of permit approval for commercial and residential construction to enhance infrastructure, provide funding for system improvements and replacement projects. We're seeing revenue under budget for the first quarter of 22, but kind of consistent with the experience for Q1 for 2023, 20% of budget. Okay, so the real estate excise tax, we have a rise in sales with 43 units sold for the first quarter of 24. Average sale price at $1,000,000 or 524. Free income of 214,853 for Q1 24 is at 20% of budget. Street and park impact fees collected through new development received at time of permit approval and used for street and park improvements. Park impact fee revenue is under budget for Q1 24 street fees on target for 24 budget. So transportation benefit biscuit, as of 2020, the city received 0.2% sales tax for transportation benefit district for street capital improvement projects. Q1 24 is experiencing a 7% increase in revenue over Q1 23. Retail sales tax revenue increase of 7% for Q1 24 compared to Q1 23. Those numbers include sales tax from construction. Without construction, sales tax revenue increased 5.3% this quarter over 24. And I will say that of the 459,000, 135,000 of that is construction. So 2023 actual expenditures came in under actual revenue totals, so funds remain healthy. We look forward to first quarter of 2024. We are again seeing total revenue received higher than actual expenses, which gets us off to a good start for the year. All right, any questions? Councilmember Supple?
Yeah, so the average selling price of a house, $1 million. Do we know, what the mean was, or how many sold above $1 million, how many sold below that? Just out of curiosity.
And I think I heard Councilmember Napoli in the stand.
Yes. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilmember Napoli.
Yeah, I just gonna go back to the question of why we were a bit above pace of a quarter of the year on the general fund, and on the detail page, it looked like potentially salaries might be the culprit that's above pace. Do you know why that is?
Oh, yes, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if it is because of, but we did have, and we can provide more detail. And I'm happy to provide more detail in the email. We have had, in quarter one, several, staff that are out. We've had to backfill using, temporary employees through Robert Half, which costs a little more money. So we have had a slight increase in quarter one on expenses related to backfilling.
I will also,
Through is, oh, sorry, I was in response to that. Are temporary employees, do those come through with services? I feel like in the past, contracted temporary workers flow through maybe services rather than salaries, but maybe something's changed.
you are correct, Councilmember Naplin. Those expenses would come through as professional services, not salaries and wages. But I do want to note that our 2024 budget amendment was all interpreted completed by our consultant, the Robert Half consultant, pretty much when I first got here. So the integrity of that data and the logic that went into compiling that data and determining salaries and benefits as well. You know, I can't really attest to the quality of that. So it could be that our budget was just not set as it needed to be for our 2024 needs.
Okay, so the trend of coming in higher on salaries could continue.
I will dig into that and see if I can come up with some detailed information to share with you. It's something that we'll definitely watch. But again, I'm not super confident on the 2024 budget numbers and the amendments that happened. So we will keep an eye on it. I'll give you some information and hopefully we can get some comfort with that, have a better understanding.
Great, other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Make sure and check the written reports and planning calendar, all that is in their books coming up. And with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 6:55.
I'd like to call the Tuesday, June fourth, Duval City Council meeting to order at 7:06 PM. And would you all please rise and stand for the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Mayor Okander.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McHenry.
Here.
Mr. Schaefer.
Here.
Mr. Mercer.
Here.
Mr. Supple. Here. Ms. Kaplan.
Here.
Ms. Kuka.
Here. Thank you. We have a forum. Under additions and corrections to the agenda, please add at the end of the agenda an executive session under W 42.30.1107 to discuss purchase of real estate. With that, are there any other additions or corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve this evening's council agenda? So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve this evening's council agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to proclamations, we have 4 this evening. Yet again, it's a busy month for celebrations in many different ways. And I'm going to start first off with something that I think is probably, well, I think all of these are near and dear to all of our hearts. But this one, I will start with Alzheimer's awareness. Whereas Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia pose significant challenges to individuals, families, and communities worldwide. And whereas Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month provides a crucial opportunity to raise awareness, challenge stigma, and advocate for more significant support and resources for those affected by Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. And whereas Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurological condition that affects memory, cognitive function, and ultimately the ability to perform daily activities impacting millions of individuals and their loved ones globally. And whereas fostering understanding and compassion towards individuals living with Alzheimer's disease and their caregivers is essential in creating inclusive and supportive communities. And whereas advancing research efforts aimed at finding effective treatments, prevention strategies, but ultimately a cure for Alzheimer's disease is paramount to improving the lives of those affected by this devastating illness. Now, therefore, I, Amy Overlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, designate June 2024 as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. During this month and beyond, let us invite our commitment to raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, including their impact on individuals, families, and communities. Promoting early detection and diagnosis to improve access to care and support services for those living with Alzheimer's and related dementia. Challenging stigma and stereotypes associated with Alzheimer's disease, fostering a culture of empathy, respect, and inclusion, supporting caregivers and families by providing resources, education, and respite care to alleviate the challenges associated with caregiving. By recognizing Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, we reaffirm our commitment to supporting those affected by Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, and our dedication to advancing research and advocacy efforts for a world without Alzheimer's. The second one is Flag Day. Whereas Flag Day is a time to honor and celebrate the flag of the United States of America, the symbol of our nation. The flag represents the principles of liberty, justice, and unity upon which our nation was founded. Whereas on June 14th, 1777, the Continental Congress adopted the Stars and Stripes as the official flag of the United States, a design that has since stood as a beacon of freedom and democracy. Whereas our loved nation's flag serves as a powerful symbol of its enduring values and the sacrifices made by generations of Americans to preserve our freedoms and uphold our democratic ideals. Whereas Flag Day offers an opportunity to reflect on the history and significance of the flag, to educate ourselves and others about the ideals it represents, and to express our patriotism and pride in our country. Whereas the flag of the United States of America has been a source of inspiration and unity in times of triumph and tragedy, reminding us of our shared heritage and our collective commitment to building a better future for all, our flag has served as a beacon to countless immigrants who now form part of the tapestry of our culture and who have contributed to the very essence of our existence and being. Whereas the city of Duval is committed to fostering a sense of community and national pride, recognizing the importance of honoring our flag and the values it embodies, and welcoming all our residents who might have been born under a different banner, who now adopted our stars and stripes as their own, and who have lived tireless lives to show that their values and their allegiances are similar to those of our founding fathers, those who came to this beloved nation of ours for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now therefore, I, Amy Oberlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, Washington, do hereby proclaim June 14th, 2024 as Flag Day. In the City of Duval, I encourage all residents to join in the celebration by displaying the stars and stripes with respect and pride, participating in community events and educational activities, and taking a moment to reflect on the significance of the flag and the enduring principles it represents. As a community, we honor our nation's symbol and reaffirm our commitment to liberty, justice, and unity. Let this Flag Day be a reminder of the sacrifices made by those who have served our country and a celebration of the freedoms and opportunities we enjoy as Americans. Remember that we are a nation of immigrants and welcome everyone regardless of their creed, genre, or sexual orientation. Please join me in reminding every resident of our wonderful city that they are welcome in our country, our state, and this great city despite any differences. We are all equal, and despite any differences, we respect them entirely. I urge all residents of our beloved city to join me in the celebration, to display the flag proudly, and to continue working together to uphold the ideals of our great nation. Third proclamation is for Pride Month. Whereas Pride Month is a time to honor and celebrate the vibrant history, culture, and invaluable contributions of the LGBTQ+ community. Whereas the ongoing struggle for our dignity, equality, and human rights for all, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, is a cause that requires our unwavering support and commitment. Whereas Pride Month is deeply rooted in the courageous actions of individuals who stood against discrimination and violence, notably the Stonewall Inn in New York City in June 1969, igniting the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. Whereas, despite significant strides toward equality and acceptance, the LGBTQ+ community unfortunately still faces discrimination, prejudice, and violence, calling for our continued vigilance and advocacy. Whereas, the diverse identities within the LGBT+ community, including but not limited to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual individuals, each contribute uniquely to the rich tapestry of our society and enhancing our collective experience. Whereas it is crucial to recognize and address the intersectionality of the LGBTQ+ identities, understanding how race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, and other factors shape the experiences of LGBTQ+ individuals. Pride Month represents an opportunity to educate ourselves and others about the challenges faced by the LGBTQ+ community, celebrate their achievements, and foster environments of inclusion, respect, and love. Whereas the City of Duval, as an inclusive and welcoming community, stands firm in its commitment to being a place where everyone can be their authentic selves and love who they choose, acknowledging that love is love and everyone deserves happiness, kindness, respect, and understanding. Whereas we honor the sacrifices, hardships, dreams, and achievements of the LGBTQ+ community, dedicating ourselves to their ongoing struggles by expressing our support through visible displays like the Pride Art at City Hall, and by enacting policies that are inclusive and welcoming to all, regardless of origin, sexual orientation, creed, or beliefs. Now, therefore, I, Amy Oberlander, Mayor of the wonderful, accepting, and welcoming City of Duval, Washington, do hereby proclaim June 2024 as Pride Month. During this month, we honor the resilience and contributions of the LGBTQ+ community, stand in solidarity with their ongoing struggle for equality, and reaffirm our commitment to creating a world where every individual is free to live authentically without fear of discrimination or prejudice. Let our small but mighty city be a beacon of hope and an example of understanding, not only to the Snoqualmie Valley, but to King County and the entire state of Washington. I urge and encourage all residents to join me in this celebration, participate in Pride Month activities, and continue working towards a more inclusive and just society. And finally, a proclamation celebrating Juneteenth National Freedom Day. Whereas Juneteenth, also known as Emancipation Day, Jubilee Day, and Freedom Day, commemorates the day on June 19, 1865, when the news of the Emancipation Proclamation finally reached Galveston, Texas, more than 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln's decree had officially ended slavery in the Confederate States. And whereas the day signifies a crucial milestone in American history, representing the triumph of freedom over oppression and the long, arduous journey towards civil rights and equality for African Americans. And whereas Juneteenth is a time to not just acknowledge but deeply understand the historical significance of this event. It's a time to honor the resilience, contributions, and cultural heritage of African Americans who have shaped and continue to shape our nation in profound ways. By doing so, we strengthen our connection to our shared history and the values that define us as a community. Whereas it is imperative to reflect on the ongoing struggle for racial justice and equity, recognizing that while significant progress has been made, there remains work to be done to ensure equality for all citizens. And whereas celebrating Juneteenth not only acknowledges the deep historical significance of this event, but also fosters a spirit of unity. It encourages all residents, regardless of their background, to learn from the past, build a better future, and promote an inclusive society that values and respects every individual's contribution to our shared history. Whereas the city of Duval, recognizing the importance of this national celebration, encourages our community to attend educational activities, cultural events, and community gatherings that highlight the significance of this historic day and inspire future generations to uphold the principles of freedom and justice. Now, therefore, I, Amy Oberlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim June 19, 2024 as Juneteenth National Freedom Day. In Duval, we not only proclaim June 19, 2024 as Juneteenth National Freedom Day, but also encourage all residents to honor this significant day. We invite you to engage in reflective and celebratory activities, and most importantly, to commit to the ongoing pursuit of equality and justice for all. Your commitment is crucial in shaping our future as a united and just community. Thank you. Moving on to comments from the audience. I will read, we do have some members here, I'm not sure if they're looking to speak, but I'll read the rules into the record. During the designated public commentary period within city council meetings, individuals are allotted a 3-minute speaking duration, while representatives of organizations may address the council for up to 5 minutes. Before presenting, kindly disclose your full name and city of residence. It is strongly advised by the city to submit verbal comments in written form to expedite subsequent correspondence. Written comments must be received by the city clerk's office by noon on the meeting day, addressed to PO Box 1300, Duval, Washington 98019, or deposited at the City Hall drop box located at 135 Main Street Northeast, or sent by email. Please be aware that the City Council, its boards, and its commissions solely entertain public comments from attendees present at the meeting in person. The council does not accept handouts or printed material during public commentary session. Information intended for the mayor or the city council shall be directed to the city clerk, who will disseminate it following the submitter's instructions. Upon receipt, the city clerk will receive written public comments and subsequently furnish them to the city council or the relevant board or commission. However, it's important to note that written comments will not be orally presented during the council or applicable board or commission meetings. Any written comments received after the noon deadline for written comments will be shared with council at the next council meeting as part of the city clerk's report. And with that, if we have any members of the audience that would like to provide public comment, please feel free to walk up to the podium and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members, fellow members of the community. My name is Jody Collins. I'm a resident of Duval, specifically on Stewart Street. Just a 3-minute walk from here, last if I'm running late. I greatly appreciate the council including the issue of consumer fireworks on this evening's agenda and providing the opportunity for me to speak to my experience. So as many know, Stewart is in the heart of the town in what I would consider one of the most densely populated places within town. And I cannot overstate just how severe the firework usage is within that street. So it very much feels as if you are under siege. And despite the fact that the city ordinance has time frames allowing the use, there is a level of unpredictability to the use. So it will start as soon as July 2nd, July 3rd, and it will continue well past 11 p.m. It becomes extremely disruptive to dogs, to young children, to just your normal course of life, especially for those members who are attempting to leave or just make plans to mitigate the impact. So I, as a member of the public, do strongly support the ban of the use of consumer fireworks, but then also encourage the council to pay specific attention to the sale of consumer fireworks. Because the severity of the issue is very much driven by the ease with which we can access the consumer fireworks. So, and with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with me?
Jen Hernandez, like you just said, these residents have been here for 10 years. I actually did not have anything to say today. I actually signed out as no, but after hearing the proclamation, I had to say something. The last 6 weeks have been pretty crazy for the LGBT community. Getting the Pride display back up, having the Pride in the park, having the proclamation. I just wanted to say thank you for all the work for this last 10, 12 months that we've been doing this. This really does feel like a capper to that whole adventure. And I just wanted to say I appreciate the fact that you all managed to get all this done with a little help from the Cultural Commission, but that we're here now. And I just wanted to say thank you and that we appreciate all your efforts.
Would anyone else like to speak? Not seeing any, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have a motion for this evening. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to the mayor's report, will be relatively brief. Definitely want to echo the shout out to our city staff as well as all the volunteers and businesses that participated and made Duval Days extraordinarily successful this year. It's absolutely amazing to watch the event continue to grow and sustain. There were times when we didn't know if the Duval Days would be back. And not only has it been back, it's been continuing to grow stronger for the last almost decade now. And it's definitely a fantastic community event that brings people not just from Duval, but from all around the area to come and celebrate and enjoy all the amenities that we have. So thank you to all of the staff, volunteers, and businesses that make this incredible event happen each year. And it is not easy, especially for our logistics side on the city staff. Also wanted to note, 2 weeks ago, both the administrator and I attended the Snohomish Valley Government Association meeting. There were some presentations, particularly on wildlife from the tribes, et cetera. Discussion of bear cams. So for those that don't know, we are in a waste management service area. They do have bear cans available at this point. You can order a bear can and actually leave your garbage outside, but for those that haven't noticed, bears are coming out much more frequently. And as they say, a dead bear is a dead bear. It only takes one time of a bear getting into a garbage can for that to destroy their natural inclination. And that includes things like hummingbird, bird feeders, etc. So I just would like to encourage everyone to take that extra step, and if you can financially afford it, to take that extra step and get that bear-proof can. Finally, we will not be having the next council meeting, but a few of us, Mayor Pro Tem, city administrator, and I will be down at the Association of Washington City Conference. As folks know, will be very honored to be taking the role of presidency for the year 2024-2025 at that meeting. I also have the honor of serving with conducting a panel with Kenmore Deputy City Manager, West Richland Mayor Pro Tem, and soon to be retiring city administrator from the South Sound, to talk about do a discussion on what it's like to be part of the city, what the expectations are from city council, strong mayors, council mayors, etc. and start the conversation of really what we should, all should be done as elected officials and how we should be working with city hall staff. I suspect that's going to lead to longer and larger trainings and presentations for, city council across the state. So very much looking forward to that. With that concludes my report.
Great, good evening, everyone. Members of the public, staff, city council, mayor, the administrative report for June 4th. This will be the one report for June, but certainly throughout the month, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I will be here most of the time. So the first department update that we'd like to provide is the latest public works. So I will kind of convert the director of relationships.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Steve Deputy Public Works. A couple of notes. If you hadn't noticed, the traffic signals were a little bit not functioning at Stevens and Big Rock. MoDOT was very receptive, came out and met with Joe, Chris, and I, and explained what was happening. They did have errors in the cabins. They did repair compartments. That was good news. They also came out to support Duval Days in person, which hopefully is the last year, because they're connecting those cabinets with FiberLink and then connecting it to the shoreline. So that won't cost us $1,400 to $1,700. Yeah, sit there all day. The Big Rock ball field survey is out. I don't have a confirmation date of closing, but it is closing soon. It's been out about 2 weeks. We are up to 356 responses, not to come close to the one we did when we started this process, which was over 700, but still good responses nonetheless. Let's see, we have submitted for Walcott Head Bike Grant. Ben was able to get that in last week. We requested 2.5 million for Third Avenue. We'll know by the end of the year. And then we had another follow-up meeting with the PSC Up and Go program folks this week. So their community survey will be coming out soon, so we'll push that through our social media outlets. And from start to finish, they are used to producing actual chargers in about 8 months. No pressure on planning, but they're usually their biggest hang up is permits. We assure them that won't be a problem. But yeah, they're ready to go. We're working on locations, and the survey's gonna go out. It's not gonna be a perfect survey because they can't limit who does it or doesn't do it and where you can or can't go. So, you know, some person gets like, oh, I want to click a button and I want it in my. We only know it can go on places where there are existing power poles that are served by existing electrical facility. But with that said, they're excited to put that out on our map, and we're excited to support that, and we hope it will be up and running within 8 months. Good news. Next slide. A couple, I do apologize, your city engineer is supposed to be here, but she didn't any circumstances at home, so you get to meet. So just a little follow-up from the last meeting on the transportation plan and element update. There were 3 questions in brief. One was about traffic situations in the AM peak at Louisville, Duval, and Big Rock. The others were map related. So the easier solution or easier response real quick, the maps. Staff have gone through those in grave detail to the mind-numbing extenuation of hours and hours and hours. So that is being worked on with our consultant team. Loris has gotten that back to them. They sent some production over today. I think the next time we come talk to you about the comp plan, you'll have updated resources that make more sense. But please remember, those are given to us by Peterson Regional Council, and sometimes their numbers are a general number that fits Bellevue for maybe not small areas involved. So with that said, the topic on question 1, did we look at AMP situations? We certainly can and do. Typically, if our PM peak is our go live, but through the secret process, we can identify like, hey, you're gonna look at this at the AM as well, and then we'll come up with mitigation measures accordingly. So we do have the opportunity to look at AM and PM, but our standard is PM. So we can address those concurrency issues. But for fun, we do have resources at our disposal of high-tech assistant engineers with drones. So, next slide, please.
Just about that one, this is more just Big Rock and Civic. Are there magnetometers in right there? I don't see the circles where they normally come in, and I was curious if beyond the traffic studies, there might be opportunities to improve just by basically installing.
Yeah, so how our signals operate are on inductive loops in the ground.
Okay, so.
You don't see them cut in because usually that comes with an overlay, like if they have to put them back in. But the newer technology, if you do overlay like we did last year, you don't necessarily need to go reinstall them because they're still sensitive to the ground with another inch.
I was curious, did not go in that 5 in the morning, they sit there for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting on.
But the signals we have in town are not video detection, so they are loops. The only video detection we have is on the bridge leg of Windsor, Duval, and Virginia. So the camera looks west, and eastbound traffic flow. When those are fiber linked, that will become a camera that will be up on the Washington site. So
Thank you.
that's exciting. But yeah, no, we do have ground loops in all of our management systems. So what we wanted to do was take a look at the AM peak. So between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. we do Tuesday through Thursday usually, because Mondays are weird and Fridays are weird, and then Tuesdays through Thursdays are typical. It's also the time buses. So the only caveat here is that we're not able to do Team Wednesday because of rain. The drone is allergic to water, so you got Tuesday through Thursday. It is a 45-second clip. Benny can probably share this out with a link after the meeting. So make sure that you receive these in your box/packet. But I think you click the tab maybe twice, click the arrow, you'll get a video activation. It's about 42 seconds. And the interesting review is obviously the Big Rock westbound movement to southbound 203. There is a small pocket, and then you have the driveway, which is essentially a cross street from Safeway and gas station to the Starbucks side. The queue clears every time. And when I say the queue, so at the stop sign or stoplight, right, you can stop, wait your turn and go. So the line got about 10 to 12 cars long on its longest leg, and all those cars make it through that. Our current level of service is a B by analysis. We don't want to get past C. We do show a C in our long-term programming, but again, there are things to mitigate that. So we just want to see what we could see, and we thought a drone video was a good way to kind of change that without doing traffic analysis on that, which we do have from consultants. But it was fun. Well, let's try it. So you know we are listening to the questions that come. And the transportation was really bad. I think that's all I have in the slides. I did have, yeah, go ahead.
Just a comment, you see, this is excellent, for us to see. You know, we hear a lot of complaints about that. And I'm sure there's situations where, yeah, you're there for more than one life, but by and large, and my personal experience, even when I'm sitting way back in that queue, I do put and it's great to see that, and frankly, it tells us, I think, well, maybe we ought to put our efforts in elsewhere where we know it's more serious problem.
Well, it's been any time to look at something in detail, it's been great.
Yeah.
You have that technology now. I mean, can't imagine trying to do that 5 years ago. They would have been sitting with a baseball pitch counter and one hand left, you know, one in each hand for different movements. So, yeah, no, it was a good exercise. Nothing's perfect. It doesn't catch in every circumstance, but it was our best attempt. And that was from 7:03 by the time you get a drone up to 8:23, depending on what kind of day. So we put together and get in the moment.
Councilmember Natalie?
Thank you. That was an interesting video. I think the question I had didn't just relate to how is it functioning now. It's that the model looking forward, once we build all these homes, add a school, do all these other things, doesn't reflect the filling up of that queue there. And so as we look and grow, this is a snapshot of what it was one day right now. What is it gonna look like when everyone moves into these homes? And I don't know that we fully understand what that would be, especially since it sounds like our model doesn't adjust to recognizing that that queue will overload and block traffic. So anyway, that was kind of what my question was, is that do we have a sophisticated enough model to predict what's going to happen when we add the homes and all of the new cars? And then this intersection is, you know, temperamental at times, but the real one where I think we don't have enough room in the left-hand turn queue is the Woodinville Duval turn. So yeah, that one especially ends up impeding through traffic because you can't get out of the way for the through traffic. Whereas this intersection, you have less of a through traffic. Most people are taking that left, so you aren't impeding that many people because most people are in the line to turn left and not trying to squeeze by the big line. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Director Laniszewski, but so it was really a looking forward and also specifically at that Woodinville Duval left turn if you're headed north on 203, that pocket is extremely small. It holds like 4 cars.
Yeah, no, technically speaking, a couple points. So the model itself can model is higher level detailed and granular. However, it will take into consideration new roads that will be connected because your traffic system is changing as well. So when those connecting roads get built out, you know, that transfers the movement of vehicles. So the model and what roads are in it will make an impact to levels of services and access to intersections. But yeah, I don't disagree, and we have talked about Woodinville Duval Road, Virginia, and Main Street. Again, the rules are you can't have a turn pocket through an intersection. So the alternative is limiting access, removing it from the that is the Shell and the Tavern side, right? So that's the trick. But yes, we have a capital project on our list, and that is the biggest project you're gonna have from a disruption, cost, and massive change standpoint to downtown. So I believe the plan calls for a roundabout. In and of itself, it's going to be difficult to build, and we own half of a bridge that wasn't really in our plan before. So I think that would be helpful.
I did hear the bubble, but I wanted to check and see if anybody else from council has anything first. Councilmember Kufelt, and then Mercer, and then Namlin.
Well, don't we have to work with the state if addressing that intersection and delivery and Duval and how much we need to do as a city?
Everything on Main Street requires coordination with the state.
And my question was related, but not specific to the, and it was discussed last meeting. Was if there was any update in terms of the summer traffic disruptions? I know the overlay on the bridge, you mentioned the bridge, which sort of triggered in my mind was in there, and then the other projects. I know that it's mitigation is hard, but I was curious if there was any updates in terms of how it's going to affect my daughter in particular. Was looking ahead of her every day, and she was not excited. And I see her there was another project in the works after next year. Yeah.
I think for the north end town of Queen Herman Road, right, that one is underway, it is night work right now. That will continue. The Woodinville Duval is still scheduled for the summer. I hope it's an under promise over perform scenario, but the bridge deck is pretty long. I mean, you don't notice it, but I think there's 4 bridges on the valley floor technically. So I have asked if they can do whatever they can in one fell swoop, like if they're gonna overlay the rest of it, if we fix another deck, knock it all out. But we are at their mercy. I've been listening, but I don't know what to expect other than they are on schedule. And just a quick note before the last question too, the Winville Duval Western Palmy Valley Road intersection this morning was significantly hampered, and you may have noticed last night it was flashing red. Tree fell and hit the controller cabinet, so they weren't having power, but they destroyed the brain. So they were saying they were gonna have fixed by the end of the day today for the commute, so I asked for traffic control by officer, they said they gave it back. I didn't see any back up on the camera, I didn't see any back up on my, or the camera was still down, but kind of Google app and you look at traffic and look for the red or green, it was all pretty clear, so I think that was cleaned up today, but yeah, that was a tree fall.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nathan?
Thank you. I don't have my notes here, but the other question I remember asking when we had that meeting about the transportation plan update was, if that took into consideration, future projects such as the school district property that's also along Big Rock and could potentially, significantly impact traffic, especially in the AM time period. And so I was just curious if any of that land use, expected land use, was being taken into consideration as we plan, what our roads will look like around there.
So yes, and that's part of the TAV map update, so they reconfirmed all the numbers that will go into the TAV, which is then what goes into the model for the long-term traffic generation.
Okay, so it is expecting that a school will be there in the 20-year plan.
I won't say yes, but it is expecting a certain amount of jobs to show up there with their ancillary trips associated. So I know that has been revised, but yeah, when we come back, we will address that.
Okay, thank you.
That is all.
Great.
Thank you, Director Lewandowski.
We will turn it over for the, to Director Thomas to provide the community development update.
Good evening, Mayor, council members of the community. This is just our monthly dashboard, so that up there you'll see our building permits issued in May, which is 47, and then our inspections for May. So in May, we issued 47 building permits, and we completed 379 inspections. So we're continuing to see pretty high levels of permits and inspections. So we've inspected it. It'll probably only get busier for the next 3 or 4 months as we go through what we call dry, well, supposedly the dry. Next slide. Over on the left, you will see that was our goodbye luncheon for Estella. We had a really good time. Planning Commission will review the environment sustainability element this month, and also the economic development element. So we try to do one element at a time per meeting because it's a pretty good amount of information to digest and have a conversation about. City Council will do the same exercise in July. We are going to have a joint workshop with Planning Commission and Council to look at the draft Park Trails open space plan and the housing element. We do expect that meeting to be a little bit longer than the norm, so I would expect to be here for 2.5 hours. And I did send out a TBD announcement, so you'll get a final announcement a couple weeks before the meeting, and we will have obviously materials for that. At that point, you will actually receive the TTS and the housing element, so you'll be able to take a look at it beforehand. And we will actually try to get it out earlier than we normally would, which would be the Friday before the meeting. So we're going to try and get it out a couple weeks early. Planning Commission has a vacancy, so if you know anybody that's interested in providing community service, we would love to see a ton of applicants. We did issue 2 notices of application this week, one for a daycare and one for the mosque. We do have an upcoming pre-application for a mixed-use development, and that's a commercial residential development. So we're trying to see more action and announcing the mixed-use arena. So we're excited about that. Next slide. We had such an amazing time at Duval Days. It was the first time that I remember, at least, I have not been at every single Duval Days, where we had our city hall doors open and we invited people in. And we asked them questions, whether it was arts and culture, or if it was specific to planning, which is, what does small town mean to you? And we had a ton of people provide a little card and then say what they thought that meant. So we will take all of those and enter them into a database, and then we'll push it out with kind of word cloud, see where the commonalities are. So that was made, and I definitely told Cynthia, as the administrator, like, I really want to do that again next year. Not that specific question, but whatever we're working on, it was super successful. Next slide. This is just kind of going back to the workshop that we had, which was on our science code update, and you're like, why are you coming back? Well, at our first meeting in July, our senior planner, Troy Davis, will come back and go through these questions with you. And these were questions that we put in our last presentation, so I'm just putting them up here again. To remember, this will go, I think, I'm sorry, Jim, when did we send our presentation out?
They're loaded the day up.
So you'll see it again. And then we will have information in that 7-sheet packet so that we can go through those questions. Next slide.
Clerk Patera, can you go back one?
Somebody.
So just a couple city hall updates. We are going to spend a lot of time doing project-based work this summer. So the first thing is the municipal financial plan project kicks off next week on June 11th. We'll meet with the consultants and we'll put together a firm timeline for that project. The goal for our first touch with council to just update you on how that project is going will be the second meeting in August. We'll come to council. Our project plan anticipates several meetings with council for that work. And next week is just kind of starting getting, usually it starts with the information request, getting all the data to them, and then working through a calendar, which I will provide as soon as possible. But exciting, we're under contract, we're gonna get that one started. Similarly, the workload analysis project has started. It's launched. I uploaded 40 plus documents to them while I was waiting for Duval Day to start on Saturday morning. So that schedule has largely been set. We're hoping that the project will conclude with a report to council at the second meeting in September. So the goal is to have that project complete by September, the municipal financial plan project complete by October, which will give you the tools you need to help develop the next budget. Similarly, in work that is budgeted and needs to happen, we will be putting out an RFP for lobbyist services. I'll put a draft RFP into the council packet for the July 2nd meeting. Get any feedback that you all might have, and then we will post that RFP immediately after the July 2nd meeting, with the hope that we get lobbyist services in with enough prep time to plan for the next legislative session. I don't have my glasses on. I think the next one is that the current specialist position and the associate planner positions are now open. I thought someone told you we were going to open them. They are open now. And then on Monday, we started collective bargaining with Teamsters for our successor contract. This time, we're hoping for a 3-year contract. Last year, we just did a 1-year, wasn't technically a rollover, because we made some amount of changes to that collective bargaining agreement, but we are in full bargaining now. I have planned for a closed session with council on June 2nd to update you on what the status of bargaining is, go over some of the proposals, and talk about what we're seeing for a 3-year contract. Next slide. And finally, I wanted to show you, so echoing, it was really fun to have City Hall open for Duval Days. So my piece of it was to get feedback on art in the community, which will assist the Cultural Commission in developing their biennial art program. So on the left was a dot exercise where I had folks come in and dot vote on the kinds of art they would like to see in the community in the future. Indigenous art got the majority, with more murals as a second. We also, as a strong third, people want water features. And then kind of second round showing there's a lot of interest in earthwork, so building out our natural environment in an artistic way. So it was really fun. I had, you know, a lot of kids coming, their parents telling them where to put the dog, and kids saying, where's the fourth, where's the thing on Kraken, why isn't it on here? It was really fun. And then on the right, we had these postcards that we put together for people to come in City Hall and help choose a theme for the mural on, Main and Woodinville Duval Road in front of the Duval Market, and we had a winner, Birds of the Valley. So indigenous birds of the Snoqualmie Valley, was the theme that, and we had quite a few people put in, postcards for that. And we also sourced with, the write-in, there was an opportunity to write in other, we did get one about Kraken. This one, but you're probably about the important theme of the mural, yeah, it's probably about it. Yeah, it was great. And, with that, I think that's my last one. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the city administrator today? Councilmember Napoli?
I just wanted to say how much I appreciated that City Hall was open and this interactive event was held. It was really fun. I popped in just for a short time, and the craziest thing happened, which I'm a big disc golf fan and had hoped we would at some point get a disc golf course. And of course, I interacted with someone and they were like, we should really have a disc golf course. So it was super funny to have that happen. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to the staff that put that on. It was already a very busy day and it was, you know, really meaningful. And I was happy to participate in that, even just for a really short amount of time. And I did have one question for Director Thomas. And I was just looking at the development map, and I was curious, I think it's Skylit Ridge, Thomas Mill property. It's had final plat for a long time, and I'm just curious, do they plan to start pulling permits, or do we know what's happening with that development?
I guess, thank you. They are actively pulling permits, they just haven't started the foundation.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we can move on to council report committee or ad hoc committee reports. Oh, you do it.
Okay. So Mayor Pro Tem and I, received a notification yesterday that we, been selected to participate in the Washington Collaborative Elected Leaders Institute, or CELI, Washington CELI. So that'll take place over I think it's 4 to 6 months, but there's a number of meetings, collaborative sessions, both in person, as well as virtual. And, basically learning from each other, learning some additional collaborative tools from UW, the Ralph Koschel Center, the Evans School at UW, and EWC, that we can essentially bring back to our community and then so really excited to take it back.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is, I almost actually forgot. I don't know how I had another thing I was focusing on. And yeah, I'm really excited to do that. And thank you for, stepping up to do yeah, because it had to be a minimum of 2 people doing it. So that'll be a lot of fun. As the mayor mentioned, I'm going to AWC just for 1 day. Because that's just a really hectic week. Next year I'm planning on doing the full conference. I'd like to be a little less hectic at that point. And then I guess, I don't know, can I do the sub bullet is mine, is it okay if I take care of that? The discussion on the small cities, association, small city association, public issues committee, so the PIC. I'm on the PIC committee, I serve on that. And so regularly, we meet and there's an agenda, and I heard from some people that their councils actually have it as like a recurring agenda item in their meetings or in their committee meetings. So that like I can talk to all of you about what's on their agenda with regional issues and you can weigh in. Alternatively, I know sometimes you might want to just read about it via email. I don't know how, well, that works for everyone, what you prefer. Just to give you a quick taste of it, the upcoming meeting, which I actually cannot go to, so as an alternate, if you'd like to go, I can send you the info to the PIC committee meeting, and so I can follow up.
Sure, go ahead, send it to me.
It's virtual, so it's, but the upcoming PIC committee has an update on the crisis care center implementation plan, with the regional policy committee. There's possible action about the PIC operating policies, and they're doing an update on the metro free use transit passes. And then a bigger thing that's come up is a discussion around a regional alignment on asylee and refugee crisis. There are some cities that have experienced a huge number of asylum seekers, and there's a lot of logistical issues that come up. And so they're looking for some advocacy region-wide to support each other. And so, these are the types of things that come up. And so if you're interested, then I can make sure when something's coming up, it would be the first council meeting of the month, because PIC is usually the second week. So if that's interesting, I can put it on a cal at the beginning of each month when we're gonna have a PIC committee, if you'd like a chance to just go through it. There might be some months where it's fairly quick and some that might generate a lot of discussion. And then I'm better informed as to what you would all like me to help bring to the table at PIC. So technology, you'd be interested in bringing in, okay. And then for now though, since, I don't want to take up too much time, I can email out what I have for the upcoming one, see if you can make the meetings that I cannot. And we'll go from there. And if you have comments, you can reply. I think we could reply to the person sending it, or do we need to send that through to the administrator? Well, maybe we can take it offline and figure it out logistically to make sure we're following up with you. And that's it. And just a huge thank you about Uvalde to everybody involved in that. It was amazing. I know it's been said a few times tonight. That was cool. So that's it.
I just did want to note for the body as well, on public issues committee, there's going to be a lot of important decisions that cities are going to be being asked to weigh in on for King County policies moving forward for the next 2 to 3 years. And most of that work will go through the public issues committee, is that first point of contact. So the more everyone pays attention to what's going on in the public issues committee with those bigger issues, the fewer presentations you'll have to have at city council, the more informed you'll be and the easier it'll be for the county to get for all 39 cities on all of those issues. And there are definitely some big things coming forward. So share that. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to presentation. First up is Agenda Bill 24-38, Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan with our emergency management coordinator.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, community. I'm Luke Eckert, the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Duval. And we're going to talk about the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan for the city today. And for this presentation, because that's a mouthful, I'm just going to say CEMP. Next slide, please. So for those of you that are not familiar with what a CEMP is, tonight I want to talk about what it is, why it's important, and what's covered in the plan. What is it about? Right. Next slide. So a comprehensive emergency management plan is a basic plan with elements addressing all natural and man-made emergencies that the city of Duval is exposed to and vulnerable to. So it specifies the purpose, city organization, roles and responsibilities of city departments, and the way we interact with partner organizations, external organizations, and all 4 phases of emergency management. And I don't have a graphic for this, but if I did, there's a really just a circle, and it's mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And it just rinses and repeats every time there's an emergency, and we're always in the mitigation and preparedness stage. And we'll get a little bit more into that later in the presentation. Next slide, please. I'm hoping, okay. Next slide. Yeah, I'm like looking at my screen, but I want to make sure we're on the same page here. So the purpose of the CMP, the basic purpose is it's a document that helps us continue to function as a city in the face of a disaster. It helps everyone inside of our organization know what their roles and responsibilities are during an emergency. And then there are state and federal requirements to have plans in place like this. And they're required for us to be reimbursed for federal disaster declarations, and also for a lot of grant eligibility. You have to have not just this basic plan. This, I'll talk more about grants in a minute. Some annexes make us eligible for additional grants, but for specifically EMPG funds, we have to have this plan implemented. Next slide. So in the development of the plan, we start with the risk assessment. What is our city vulnerable to? So on the left, you'll see natural disasters, and we have probability and risk, right? The risk being the exposure that we have to them. Earthquakes, medium. This is a little outdated because this is from a previous hazard mitigation plan, which we're working on updating right now. So this list might get a little updated with colors and vulnerability. Floods and extreme weather. We've all seen that come and go in the city of Duval. We're very likely to have them, and we have a high risk of them. Wildfires in the medium still. That's one of those ones that might be updated with the next iteration of the hazard mitigation plan, just based on weather patterns or climate patterns over an extended period of time. Landslide, volcano, tsunami, avalanche. Avalanche obviously pretty non-existent. The others very low. Additional risks that are not necessarily natural disasters that we do have exposure to: industrial accidents, hazardous material spills. Kind of a stub accident would be power outages. That's a secondary effect to some of the previous ones. Cyber incidents, terrorism, and civil unrest are all things that are addressed and we talk about in this plan. Yeah.
You want questions to go on, or you want?
Sure. Yeah, we can go as we go.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was interested because just, when I first glanced at wildfires, oh, hot. Just like you were alluding to. What criteria goes into the low, medium, high?
So during the hazard mitigation plan development, which is just the beginning process, they'll look at data and criteria for like the region and what's changed over a longer period of time, and then assess has that risk actually increased based on an extended period of data.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Without getting
That's good. Thanks.
two, and then we can get them. On the next slide. So quick example, this is from the King County Regional Hazard Mitigation Map on GIS online. So the red is the flood inundation zone for Duval, and we turn into an island during big floods. The last big one that totally shut us down was in 2009, but on average it's every 5 to 10 years that happened. And then those little dotted lines are actually fault lines. And that'll probably be something that's going to be significantly updated with just more data and research on what kind of earthquake activity we're exposed to. Just something to keep in mind that those exist. Next slide. Another example, maybe Director Lenachevsky could weigh in on when this snowstorm was, but we have extreme weather incidents. This is in Duval on, looks like on 203 somewhere. Yeah. Next slide. So the structure of the plan, we've established what risks we're exposed to, and now we need to figure out how we as a city respond to that. So the plan outlines the organizational structure for our staff during emergencies in all 4 of those phases of emergency management. It gives each city department their specific roles and responsibilities within the structure. Plans for community engagement, continuity of communications and city functions. So within this, there is an emergency communications plan that needs to be flushed out some more over a period of time, but this is an initial plan. It has designations of authority during an emergency, who has the authority to make what judgment calls, because it changes a little bit during an emergency or disaster declaration. It talks about finances, how we manage finances in an emergency, how we get reimbursement from federal disaster declaration. And then at the end of the plan, there are annexes, and currently there are 15, and they kind of go a little more in depth into incident-specific situations, like how we manage fires, how we manage law enforcement. It's still pretty high level, but a little more in depth than what you'll find in the basic plan. Next slide, please. So part of developing the CEMP is making sure it coincides with other regional plans. So every city in King County has a CEMP, and all of them are relatively similar. And the reason for that is if somebody from another city is going to come help us, or we're going to go help another city, having them be relatively the same helps them integrate into our systems to assist us efficiently versus just going out and doing our own thing. So there's a standard practice that we all communicate with and was implemented in the development of this plan. So during the development of this plan, lots of partner organization and agency liaisoning, having people read over the plan, make sure that their roles and responsibilities fit. All the departments within the city have reviewed the plan already at this point. Some individuals have asked to review the plan that are staff members until this point. So it's gotten a lot of eyes on it, but now it's time for the next step. Next slide. So just a quick outline of the 4 areas of emergency management in the city. So mitigation is the first one. So we've identified a risk. How can we get rid of that risk as much as possible within what our capabilities are within the city? So some of those might be projects. So like the Adopt a Drain program is a really good example of this to prevent flooding by having community members pull debris out of drains, working on potential policy changes on the way fireworks are implemented in Duval. These are all examples of mitigation strategies, just trying to get rid of risk in general. There's a lot of grants available for projects like this. So FMAG, fire management, EMPG, that's one that I just had a meeting with today about our application for this year. And that's actually emergency management performance grant, and that can be used for any emergency management functions within the city. It's a pretty broad grant. These hazard mitigation planning grant, building resilient infrastructure in communities, and flood mitigation assistance are all mitigation project based. So it would be like stabilization of the shoreline or anything like that. And then there's a hazardous materials emergency preparedness grant. This is an example of a mitigation activity. This is with search and rescue out behind in the Southwood Creek area, identifying areas with good radio contact if an evacuation ever needs to be run out in that direction when we're in island. This was in the fall of last year. Next slide, please. So we've gone through the plan and we've mitigated for every risk that we think we can, and there's still always going to be some level of exposure to disasters, and then that's what we prepare for, is what we can't completely get rid of. So part of the preparedness in the plan outlines how we build partnerships externally to increase our resources and response capabilities, especially if a disaster happens and our internal capabilities get overwhelmed very quickly. We're going to be having to rely on external agencies and partners to be able to manage that situation. Part of preparedness is training for our staff. So the training program is outlined pretty extensively in the CEMP. I'll talk a little bit more about training in a minute. Trainings and exercises too, and then community outreach. So for instance, we had a booth at Earth Days and a booth at Duval Days talking to the community about individual household and regional community preparedness for disasters, so that hopefully they can be better prepared in these situations. And our resources are overwhelmed less readily, especially by having the community prepared. Next slide. So part of that's our training and exercise program, which is outlined in this, and it's training for staff. So there's the National Incident Management System standard. Most of you will probably, hopefully have heard of IS 100, 200, 700, 800. So those standards have changed a little bit over the years since the last CEMP, which was in 2014. This is the first update since then. COVID kind of got in the way of everything. So we're working on those 4, but then expanding that so our staff has the training to be able to integrate with each other and with the local government, state, federal government during an emergency. And then the county offers a lot of trainings. This is a photo of us. We're developing a functional exercise for a Tolt Dam failure in the fall. This is the planning team organizing logistics for that. Just a photo of what kind of projects we're doing and following. Next slide. So we've mitigated everything we can. We've prepared for what we can't mitigate, and then we respond, right? So the CEMP outlines how the city uses the incident command system. And that's kind of the bread and butter of the CEMP, is how does everybody in this room coordinate together to respond to an incident with all of these external organizations and all of these external partners? Because when a big regional event happens, these structures get really big and exceed our day-to-day operations really quickly. So how do we manage that? And this breaks it down. Coordination, yeah, and then a big part of this is alert notification procedures, not just for our staff, but also for members of our community. How do we get the message out to people that we need to evacuate the city? How do we get the message out that there was a false alarm that told them? All those kinds of policies and procedures are outlined in this. Yeah.
Candace, a question, and you may get to this in detail because it's a little different from the deck that was shared, but you know, I was looking down through all the ESFs, and as you said, they're very granular, but particularly around columns, and I'm mentioning it because the alert and notification. One of the things I didn't really see covered in detail, and maybe it's part of the planning, but it's just not documented, is, you know, redundant systems beyond the 800 megahertz two-way radios, you know, having a Starlink system.
Yeah.
Does the city have a sat phone? I know there's some pilot programs that GSA is running around notify.gov that tie in and do text-based notifications. I think those are things that maybe aren't documented here, but the city is exploring options.
So I'll talk a little bit more about incident-specific annexes, and then there's some additional plans that still need to be developed. But as an example for communications redundancy, so we do have, like, the county has some capabilities like wireless emergency alerts, which is a WIA. I'm in talks with a couple partner organizations about potentially getting some grant money to put up a radio broadcast station to be able to do AM or FM low frequency radio broadcast as like a super backup communication system. But yeah, there's a separate plan that should include that. It's a lot more in detail than just the.
I think that was the case. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and last. So then the disaster's over, we stabilized the incident, we responded, and then how do we recover from that? So the plan outlines how we take immediate actions after a disaster to resume normal functions of the city and get back to normal life. And then long-term restoration, and then how do we use after action reports to improve our systems and make sure that when something happens again, we always do a better job than we did the last time. Right? Next slide. So for the plan, you know, we're implementing it now, but plans are active documents like this. This is not something that just sits. It's something we're constantly improving and constantly learning from, right? So this specific plan, it's stated in it, so it'll be reviewed every year, and then it's a legal requirement from the state to do a full review with the state every 5 years. And then it's also written into the plan every time there is an incident that we declare an emergency that we, you know, we're going to be using the plan, but after that, we should go through, contrast it with our after action reports and make sure that we're improving the plan. And also the plan is publicly available on the website. So if people have feedback or anybody with institutional knowledge or expertise sees it, they're like, hey, you should include this. This is something that's, you know, you haven't thought of yet. Next slide. Keep forgetting to say next slide. So this is just an example of a section of the CEMP, so you can kind of get a sense of how it's broken down into roles and responsibilities of, for instance, the finance department. It's not broken down into the phases of emergency management, but again, a broad overall scale of what do they do during a disaster. Next slide, please. Okay, so the basic plan, the CEMP, is very high level. I wish it was very specific, but it's still very high level and it's 188 pages long. So additional plans and annexes really do need to be made. So an example of some plans that need to be developed and some that are already in progress. So we need a continuity of operations plan, continuity of government. It's basic outlined in here, but it should be a little more in depth on how we manage that, how the communications work around it. The regional hazard mitigation plan, so that makes us eligible for a lot of additional grants. We have not yet had an annex in the King County regional hazard mitigation plan, but I am in the process of starting that out with them, and that should be done sometime in 2025. The city should have an evacuation plan, debris management plan. You know, maybe if we have a landslide, how to get rid of this debris. We have floods, where do we put them? Volunteer management plan is a good example. So we have a big disaster and people are showing up and they're saying, hey, how can I help? Well, putting a plan in place on how specifically you manage that situation, because that happens a lot in larger scale disasters. Community members come out of the woodwork to support each other, which is amazing, but organizing them in a meaningful way is important. So this is the big one that you were talking about, and it's the comprehensive emergency communications plan. So this would be either a standalone document or an annex, and how we notify in multiple different ways with a ton of redundancy. And then a big part of it would be pre-scripted messaging. This is kind of one of the standards that cities are moving towards. So instead of having, every incident you're coming up with a notification from scratch, we all have very similar messaging between cities so that people recognize what it means. And an example of that is like the Ready, Set, Go wildfire evacuations. Everybody's moved to that system, so they know like level 1, 2, 3, ready, set, go. Well, everyone in the state of Washington, it's not a federal standard yet, but everyone knows what that literature means essentially. Unsolicited donations plans. So after disaster, sometimes people want to donate money to help relieve that. How do we manage that money? Mass casualty plan. A bunch of people. There's a shooting or another incident that a lot of people are killed in, and how do we manage that with our limited capabilities as a small city? How do we notify all of their families with our limited staff when most of our law enforcement and fire is probably still dealing with that incident? Are we waiting? Just having that down on paper, how exactly we want to deal with that. Ongoing snow management plan looks pretty good right now, but ongoing as we develop that, because I don't know if it's stood the test of a winter storm yet. Probably not, I'm not sure. And then our workplace safety manual was another example of a plan to be updated. The last update was in 2014. Some policies have changed and best practices have changed. And yeah. Next slide. All right, any questions?
Councilmember Schaefer?
Not a question, first of all, thank you and the staff for putting this together. Believe it or not, I every single paragraph, but I looked through all 180 pages.
I appreciate that.
And it was very, very impressive. Can we go back to the last slide, John? That last slide answered my big question. My big question was, this is a great, your plan is a great overview, but it doesn't go into detail on some of the really important stuff. And you highlighted the evacuation plan. How are we going to evacuate 8,000 people? Where are we going to put them?
Yeah,
for that matter, right?
exactly.
And that's the kind of details we need in that evacuation plan. Ron's question and the thing you have here. Yeah, how are we going to communicate when there's no cell service anymore, no electricity for that matter? How do we actually communicate outside and coordinate? So these are excellent, and I'm just pleased to see this. And it looks like we still have a lot of work to do, but thank you.
Councilmember Nelson?
Thank you. I was just curious, compared to the plan that we had done, and I guess it sounds like 2014, is there a red line maybe available? I'm just curious how much has changed, or maybe if there's substantive changes, if there was, I don't know, maybe it was a complete rewrite and a red line's impossible, but I was just curious.
Yeah, it was a complete rewrite from scratch. So the old plan is available, and also the recommendations from the state on what needs to be changed with the old plan and with the current plan, what additions they would like to see made. But it's a complete rewrite, so a little difficult.
Okay. Sounds good, thanks.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro
Thank you for all your work on this, really great. And also just want to say I appreciate seeing you out and about so much in the community. I think that's really essential part of all of this stuff. Thank you.
Everyone else? Sorry,
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple points maybe Luke didn't hit on. What is in the packet is what the state and the Fed want to see. That completes our job to their level. These pieces, like you said, are important overall, are more of our local level. Luke has worked diligently with the state to make sure that the format as well as the content meets the requirements. He's already got that pre-approval. So, it's in there for your review. Obviously, not a lot of people want to read 180 pages. It is fairly boilerplate, however, it is pertinent to Duval Fire 45 in our area in the county. So that's all good news. If you have questions, comments, send them through Cindy's office, we'll distribute. And we don't have another meeting this month. We'll be back next month for passage. They do want that done. It does make us eligible for grants, like he was saying. There are expansive annexes that make us further, compliant with other grants and eligible. So lots going on. And I think, someone you all haven't noticed but has a little bit of a passion for emergency management. So, if you didn't know, he does, there's a knife in his pocket, flashlight in his other pocket, probably a kayak in his car, just to get a towel away.
Maybe.
He does a great job. All in all, the plan is a great role. It's part of what his role was brought here to do. But other things that, you've seen around town, safety integration for the city, like he's in charge of our safety committee, bringing us up to speed on standardized meetings now. The different like police have a role, like for Duval days, public works has a role for Duval days, but little things that are subtle you may not have noticed if you move off from either end of town through the project of Duval days. There wasn't a barricade standing there now, right? There was a semi. And that is relevant to today's driving through the bend and creating that, disruption and harm. So that was, we all look at it like, man, okay, over the top, but is he over the top? No, we're just trying to prevent something from happening at that level. So, great to have Luke, he's doing a great job, and his plan is as simple as it may seem. It was a ton of work, even though it's not in fine detail yet, and those annexes can be added over time, they're not due, and we will add those and keep this moving forward, but there's a lot of effort and energy in safety, not just relative to FEMA incident, command structure, but city general trainings, first aid, CPR, AED, all that is ongoing with, Luke's support, because we can focus on those things now. We have some moving parts. We're going to get a presentation like that, maybe relative to the CMP. I've given you a book on a couple of sentences and probably with minutes. All in all, good information coming forward. We'll get this adopted next month and continue to grow the plan for annexes.
Thank you, Director Lewandowski. And Director Lewandowski actually took some words right out. I hope folks can see that this is not just the write a plan and put it on a shelf thing. The jurisdictions that write a plan and put it on a shelf don't manage their emergencies well, whether it's flood, snowstorm, earthquake, etc. And I've seen more in the last, Luke's been here just over a year now. I've seen more in our city in relating to emergency management planning and safety training and etc. for our employees that's required that we haven't been doing that I've seen in all of my 15 years combined being involved with the city. So I think that's a real testament to, as Director Lennox said, the director's passion for emergency management as well as his knowledge and capability and skills. And I feel that because of his due diligence and work in pulling this together, and pulling staff together, and pulling trainings together, and looking at potential details, that we are better off than we've ever been in the city. And now it's time to continue to take the next steps forward, as well as get council trained on roles with responsibilities and do those regional exercises and take those trips back to Emmitsburg, Maryland, and build those relationships with our regional partners, because we have King County Emergency Management. When something happens, they're not equipped to come up to Duval. Duval will be up on its own, and I can't stress that enough. And so the training and the planning that Luke is putting in place for our community is our first and best line of defense. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind. And I just want to make sure that that's stressed, that this is huge. It's a huge body of work. It's stressful work. Emergency managers get training in how to deal with the stress of these disasters as well. Because you go through, even if it's just a snowstorm, you go through a level of stress that the average person just never experienced, and trying to manage and keep your team to be safe. So thank you for all of this incredible. Go ahead, Councilor Long.
Just have to, I want to make sure everyone had a chance. I have a sort of follow-up question, because I'm kind of a, this is a passion for me too. Folks will say I carry an ED and autistic kid, a trauma kid in my car. I have a phone. I'm a few penetrating their team. How, if we wanted to get more involved, either as sort of an adjunct or an assist, or, you know, is there an opportunity for the council beyond the training to get more involved in the training process?
Certainly, yeah, so, obviously, you are always welcome to join any of the CPR AP first aid courses if you need refreshers. There's also in the NIMS training guidance, there is a section for elected officials with suggested training that I can send to people, and that's part of what I'd like to see coming out of this too, is that our elected officials are taking those trainings and understanding how they integrate within the system and policy direction and what that looks like and how those communication methods work. So absolutely. Yeah, the Citizen Core Council. So we have an MOU with a community partner organization that has a bunch of various capabilities. They can help with sheltering. They can help with a community emergency response team. That's another way to get involved or get training. They do CERT trainings. I'm blanking right now, but there's a whole bunch of trainings that I can follow up with you on that they offer as well for disaster and emergency preparedness.
And Luke, are they hunting for volunteers to join their groups?
Always.
And when do they meet?
Meetings, they do trainings and exercises throughout the year. So for instance, coming up, I think this weekend or next weekend is field day. So for backup communications, like we're talking about, this is one of the capabilities that we would assist with them through, or they would assist up through, is Snowbark, which is an amateur ham radio club organization. And every year they do a national drill where they talk to other people around the world to be able to practice their skills. Essentially, they do it up on Evacuation Hill Incarnation. But lots of ways to get involved with them, yeah.
Appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great work. Moving on to Agenda Bill 24-32, proposed ordinance on busking, city administrator.
Thank you. I think presentation is probably going to be an aspirational term here. Instead, it's going to be a quick update on the feedback I received on busking, because we don't seem to have a strong emphasis on doing policy work to improve busking. I'm recommending that we pause the discussion and not take it up at this time. So it's more of not understanding council direction to take that approach. I do, however, have asked officers if they just a few words on the opposite, right? So this was picked up as a potential to allow busking in certain situations. We did receive comments on the converse of doing some ordinance work on restricting access to busking activities, and officer will say a few words on that. But my recommendation at this point is to pause, because we don't have a huge influx of interest either in the community or in council to do this policy.
Thank you. Oscar?
Yeah, thank you and good evening, members of the council. The topic of busking makes me a little bit nervous on the legal side of things. There are some First Amendment free speech issues to take into account if a city decides it wants to regulate. And so I think the threshold question is, do we have a situation where we need busking regulations or not? And if there is interest in pursuing that type of regulation, then I think the question is, do you want to have something that's maybe associated more with special events, because special events tends to attract more attention from people who want to busk because you have a higher concentration of people at an event and therefore more exposure? Or would you want something kind of on a more citywide basis? And the kinds of things that raise some potential red flags for me from a legal standpoint would be things like requiring a permit ahead of time, because that can be viewed as a prior restraint on free speech. Also charging a permit fee, and I think there's a criminal background check section in the proposed ordinance. I think that might be problematic as well. Aspects that would not be problematic are, prohibiting the use of sound amplification devices, or imposing, decibel restrictions. And obviously, a city has the ability to adopt regulations that prohibit a busker from interfering with pedestrian or vehicular use of the right of way or other public space. And so there's a lot of interesting issues to think about from a legal standpoint. We can take a deep dive into those if and when the council decides that now's the appropriate time. But just kind of wanted to provide a high level overview of what some of the legally problematic areas might be.
And Oscar, the other part is whether or not council would be permitted to do, instead of allowing busking in certain situations, whether council can prohibit that activity within the city, like as a complete ban.
Yes, and perhaps I should have been more clear about that. I think that would be highly problematic under the First Amendment. Busking is kind of in the same category as that sort of classic right that a person has to bring a soapbox to the public square and have a go into a political lecture, or proselytize on their religious views and things like that. And so just banning busking within the city, I think, would be potentially unconstitutional.
Councilmember Natalie?
Thanks. So within my feedback, I had sort of an embedded question about what exactly is busking, because I understand anyone could go bring their guitar and start strumming it at the park. That's not busking, in my opinion. Busking is when you're accepting money and an expectation of putting out a jar and taking, requesting donations as part of a performance. And so I just want to double check. At this point, when you say, it's hard to restrict busking, are you talking about the portion that's just anyone just speaking their free mind up on a little box? Or are you talking about that it would be problematic to disallow people to be, as Councilmember Schaefer was in a way panhandling, So where do you draw the distinction of what busking is and what you potentially can't disallow?
Yeah, and the term busking is really one that gets defined by the local jurisdiction, and in the examples I've looked at, it invariably includes a donation element to it, in addition to just the playing of music or putting on a performance. And so there is case law that talks about how you can certainly ban or restrict, aggressive solicitation, but I think just the act of having your guitar case open or having a cup with a sign that says donations on it, that's part of busking, and I'm including that element of it within my comments about what would be hard to prohibit under the First Amendment, because we have both federal and state cases that talk about asking a stranger for aid if you do it in a non-aggressive, non-confrontational way. That's also speech under the First Amendment.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thanks.
I think you touched on my question. I sort of brought this up earlier, the unintended consequences of Gilbert and neutral speech and how this applies, or cities are being, this is now being applied to busking and panhandling, and my specific comment was about panhandling. What I had read about some recent cases is even, panhandling as it's defined is covered as potentially protected speech. So it's really hard to govern with anything other than content neutral policies, which I think is where you let off to if you define where or interfering with a pedestrian, but it's got to be very generic, the aggressiveness, but explicitly banning even the request for funds is still could be considered speech. So I think if there's any clarification there, but I think you answered about what I was gonna ask you about.
No, I think you summed it up really well. So I think you've got it.
Councilmember Schaefer, and Mayor Pro Tem.
You want to go first? Okay, let's see, first, I think it's a bad use of staff time to continue this, I would take, Cynthia's suggestion and, put it on the shelf, I think that's the smartest thing to do. But I did want to highlight my biggest problem with busking and panhandling for that matter, and it involves children. I don't know how many of you, remember maybe a year or so ago at Safeway. That's not the Safeway parking lot, not city, so we have no jurisdiction there, but there were panhandlers playing their accordion, buskers, if you will, because they were entertaining with their donation jar with their kids, little kids, right? And of course, those little kids are there to solicit sympathy and get more donations from people. In my opinion, this is a form of child exploitation, child abuse, if you will. When we mentioned something about even age of 13 being allowed as a busker, this is just a complete no-go with me. A 13-year-old child is not old enough to make decisions about whether they should be entertaining others for money or not, especially when they may be required to do so by their parent or guardian. The city being involved with such a thing, to me would be absolutely good. So the idea of a busker with a child who get more sympathy or attention for people and solicit more money is, I think, very problematic, more problematic in my mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm letting this go and moving on, and if it comes up again in the future, and I also agree with, trying to ban anything, it just seems like a lot of regulation and hoops to jump through for something that hasn't been so much, or if at all, an issue. And I, here's some of those concerns as well, and I agree, but I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like there's probably adequate state laws to address child welfare, and if that was ever in question, a welfare check call to the police should hopefully help solve that.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of busking at special events, I like that aspect of the agenda bill. But I'm in favor of just tabling it for, so long.
Councilmember.
And I would agree with that person's problem.
Right, there's consensus. All
Thank
right.
you.
We do have a public hearing this evening on agenda bill 24-39, the Tier Transportation Improvement Plan. So before we open that public hearing, I'm going to read the rules into the record. In adherence to the regulations outlined for public hearings before the Duval City Council, Chapter 9 of the City Council Procedures Manual, any individual seeking to address the council during the designated public comment segment must comply with the following procedures. First, sign in on the provided form specific to the public hearing, and second, thoroughly complete all pertinent sections of the said form. On commencement of the hearing, as announced by the chair, typically the mayor, the city clerk will present the chair with the sign-in sheet. Subsequently, the chair will proceed with the agenda for the public hearing. Each speaker will be summoned to the podium in the order listed on the sign-in form, where they must communicate their name and, if relevant, their address, affiliation with any organization or group being represented, and the corresponding role or position within said organization or group. Time limits for speaking engagements are 3 minutes for individuals representing themselves and 5 minutes for those representing a group or organization, unless otherwise determined by a majority vote of the council president. The city clerk will monitor and enforce these time limits, setting a timer for each speaker. Comments should be pertinent to the subject matter of the public hearing and respectfully addressed to the city council, with personal remarks being deemed inappropriate. Disorderly conduct, including disruptive behaviors such as booing or harassment, will not be tolerated and may result in removal from the premises. Speakers may alternatively submit written statements which will be added to the official record by the city clerk. Questions posed during the hearing will not be answered immediately, but may be addressed at the chair's discretion following the close of the comment period. Copies of city council and public hearing procedures will be available upon request and distributed to attendees outside of each public hearing session conducted by the Butte Falls City Council. And with that, Director Lenashevsky.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
will
Hello again, Steve Lenashevsky, Public Works Director. I'm gonna ask the clerk to share my screen so you don't have to hear me to the next slide. Oh, whatever. All right, well, thank you all. So hoping to help you.
Yes, it will be open.
Okay. So for the public hearing, we present a presentation on the 6-year transportation improvement program. Briefly, this has the requirements of our program, and changes this year, provides a list and map that's called the timeline. So the 6-year transportation improvement plan is required annually in the state of Washington. It's part of our transportation system and shows how our system is identified as well as needed to grow into needs. It is required to be supported by a transportation element in the city comprehensive plan. You are all aware that we have to run through our large decade annual our decade review of the comprehensive plan itself and all of its content. So they're kind of throwing everything out and looking at everything from scratch, but we still have to provide this plan. Here. So this does identify our top priority projects. Process for how that happens, it goes from high level down to and implementation provides labeling of our roads and classifying them and the expectation of how they are used and managed and shared upon by our community. So this year there is only one map change in our system. Two technically. We completed a part of our 17. Which is on Big Rock Road adjacent to the Toll Brothers project on their mixed-use institutional phase. And then we had somehow omitted M2. We finished half of M2 last year, and that is on the corridor to the left of your screen here. So down in this region, the 1st or 2nd Avenue. So that was somehow stricken from the map. So we were adding that back to the list. Because the extension of that road is still either something the city would provide for or would be constructed new by the community. And this is a 6-year plan, 2025 through 2030. You might think that's 5 years, but you have to count each year of it. 25, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 30 is 6. And then that said, the map, again, aside from adding M2 back to the list, is provided in the packet. It's comprehensive inspections, roadway reconstructions, programs, etc. Years ago, when we did Main Street South and we provided for borrowed money, we put that on the list in case anybody wants to understand why they may see a loan repayment in our programming work, not our projects. Those loans typically go over 10 years. So in year 7, when we top of our list, somebody might want to know what we paying. So we have a section for completed or work that has been bottom. The map again, just updating the Big Rock Road section, which is green and was removed, and then adding back to the team. We submitted this in the packet on the 7th. We are here today at the 4th. This is the hearing. We'll have a discussion item after this, assuming the hearing closes. And then typically we would have another meeting to discuss if there are any required improvements, changes, questions, but we do not have a meeting, so it is recommended after the hearing, we have discussion and hopefully pass. With that, that is all that I have for the public hearing on the 6-year transportation improvement plan.
Thank you, Director Lenashevsky. Clerk, do we have anyone sign in for public comment this evening?
No, Mayor.
And with that, then I will close the public hearing. And move on to existing business, and we'll move straight to the 24-30 minutes, 6-year transportation and improvement plan for discussion and decision. Council, would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, to approve, resolution, Agenda Bill 2439, to approve the resolution approving the 2025 to 2030 6-year transportation improvement.
I'll second. Great, it's been moved and seconded to approve agenda bill 24-39. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Then we move on to agenda bill 24-40, Third Avenue construction for culvert and installation for discussion and or decision. Director Laniszewski.
Good evening again, also citizens. Like Jesse Powers, senior project manager, Mr. Rutherford is on the screen there. Today we had a bid opening for the installation of the culvert we purchased for Third Avenue a couple months back. So he is here to share those results and hopefully get us moving forward with our plan.
Thank you, council members and mayor. I'm Ben Ressler, senior project manager. So earlier today, we received bids for our Cocoman's Creek Culvert replacement project. This is the initial phase of our Third Ave corridor reconstruction. And then we'll do improvements between Kennedy Drive and Taylor Street. Adding.
Hey, Ben, 1 second.
Yep.
He shared his screen. I don't know where it went.
Oh. Am I not sharing my screen?
You were.
No, I had you on the wrong screen. Sorry.
Sorry, guys. Are we good? Okay, so the city received 6 bids this morning. I am still in the process of reviewing them, reviewing the bid packages and getting references on contractors. That said, we're bringing this to council today because this is a time-sensitive item. We're trying to hit the fish in water work window, which is in August. And so we're trying to get pre-approval. So we're seeking approval for the lowest responsive and responsible bidder as determined over the next couple days as we get clarification on the bidders and to get a 10% construction contingency. So our engineer's estimate for the project was 2.86 million. The bottom couple bidders are right around that project estimate. And then, so essentially we're just asking for approval. And then at the July 2nd meeting, we will be back. We're talking with our design team, KPG Somas, for construction management services. At this point, I'll just open it up for questions.
Ms. Castle, any questions? Councilmember Nadlin?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I read in the packet, that what we would be approving isn't a specific contract, but an up to, and I can't remember what the dollar amount was.
Yeah, the number I said in the agenda bill was 3.5 million. That was before we knew what bids were going to come in at. We got 3 that are under that, 2 that are right around the engineer's estimate.
Do you still feel like we need to have an up to 3.5 and not a lower number, I guess?
So 3.5 would include the top 3. That would be up to council to decide. I think having 3 options is good. But I would assume that somebody in the top 2 would be qualified.
Okay. And does that include the 10%?
That does not.
Council ask, please. Does any other council members have questions? Councilmember Kuzbel.
I don't have a question per se, I just have a general comment that, you know, lowest bid isn't always the best. You want to go with whoever has the best track record and the availability to complete it on time.
Thank you, Councilmember Mercer.
And just a point of clarification, I think the recommendation was up to 3.5 million and to include a 10% project management reserve. Is that inclusive of the 3.5 or that is above and beyond, just to get clarification on the ask?
That was not inclusive
Okay,
of the 10%.
that clarifies the bit.
Yeah.
And then just for council members who don't comment, your attorney is online. We do have a vetting process that sometimes you have to take the lowest, they've done everything right, but we do try to qualify the lowest responsive bidder.
Okay.
Which again is why project manager Ressler mentioned, like, yeah, let's say you have to throw the one out and the two out, and we still afford a three, so those are the numbers, we provided for. We will be continuing our due diligence. We've started that today. We have a meeting tomorrow morning or midday with our engineer team to go over any of those liabilities and then come to conclusion. But yeah, we just don't have time to come back to council to meet the in-water work window. And we would report, of course, on who is selected and move forward. Or if we have to top it out, maybe they all made mistakes. That has happened. But thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda bill 2440, awarding Nicole Clemens Creek culvert replacement purchase. Contract to the lowest responsible bidder upon staff review of bids up to 3.5 million and to administer a 10% project management reserve.
So,
Great, it's been moved and seconded to approve agenda bill 24-40. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. And Councilmember Naplan, you are on mute, so if you could please register your vote by voice, that would be appreciated.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted and said aye. So
Okay.
I.
It happens so soon. All right, motion passes, and with that, we will adjourn to executive session for 15 minutes. Under first session, where do we need one? 10, okay, executive session for 10 minutes, and we're going to be 42, that's 30, and discuss purchase of real estate, and we do not anticipate any further action by the council this evening other than adjournment.
So the Well City Council will return on the record at 21:17.
We have adjourned from executive session at 9:15 PM. There is no further business. We are now adjourned. Thank you.